What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here. I'm the design lead of Summoners Rift Team's live pod, here to talk about patch 14.10 coming to a server near you, probably already by the time you watch this video. It is the mid-season patch. Split 2 begins. I think it's going to be very exciting. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. This is the culmination, of course, from a lot of work from the seasonal pod. On the live side of things, we had a couple of longer-term projects that came in, as well as just some things that were in scope of an individual patch's worth of work. And so let's talk about them piece by piece. There was a whole lot going on here. There's a few champion changes that matter a little bit, but primarily a whole bunch of updates to the systems in League of Legends. We're going to go ahead and jump down to the things that I had at least a moderate amount of direct involvement in. And so first up are systems changes to experience and gold income. The driver here overall was bringing up the durability of bot laners, and, you know, supports are going to have some of that as well, and that's fine. And additionally, bring up the individual agency of junglers a little bit. So the tough thing is that jungle is probably still the strongest role in the game, and what it comes down to is making the choice between having autofilled junglers lose the game for you and just having jungle be even more an overpowered role. The tough thing is jungle's power is largely in their dominance over team-wide objectives, and unwinding that's very, very hard. Their 1v1 agency isn't very high, because they are usually the third highest level champion in the game. Everyone's going to be able to duel the Thresh support. Everyone else can duel the AD carry, and then junglers next, which means that they usually can't duel top laners, they usually can't duel mid laners, they can duel champions that are usually paired up, which means they can't really fight 1v2 there either. And so it's, you know, somewhat understandable that junglers will feel like, oh, I'm really, really weak, I can never fight anyone heads up, which is true, but the core strength of being a jungler is that you don't have to fight anyone heads up, you get to have infinite map mobility. And so I don't know how to really balance those factors out, right? You have more map mobility than any other role in the game. You don't get to be stronger than everyone else individually, but also I can understand the feeling that, oh, I'm a glorified support, or I'm just weaker than other champions, whatever, which is like only sometimes actually true. And then on the bot lane side of things, of course, as an AD carry, you're the, you know, fourth lowest level, or fourth highest level, second lowest level champion of the game. Anyone but the support can duel you, and some supports are actually going to be able to duel you, just because they're Xerath or whatever, and you know, Xerath can get a lot of gold, right? But anyway, this is basically saying that this is basically just trying to bring up the baseline, like, underperforming power of an AD carry who's locked in lane and gets no gold, or a jungler who's just kind of farming and doesn't get ahead of the curve. And so we're basically bringing up the lower end of junglers and kind of the lower end of AD carries. And again, the driving factor here is largely about durability. Generally speaking, experience gives more durability than it gives damage. When you compare that, gold gives pretty much only damage for most champs in the game. If you're a fighter or a tank, you get some durability, but pretty much everyone else is going to get only damage out of their gold income. And so it was intentionally raising the experience gain of roles that aren't necessarily weak, but that can often feel weak to play, and using catching up in levels is a way of doing that, because at least you'll have a bunch of, you know, you have slightly better base damages, you get some damage output, and primarily going to get extra baseline durability, and that will make you feel less preyed upon. So that's kind of the overall reasons here. And so here are the experience gains. It's about 7% more experience gained when you're sharing XP with other champions. This sort of scales exactly as linearly as you would expect if there's 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever champions in the game. Technically, under the hood, you can just define what this number is at champ 1, at champ 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I did the implementation here. I chose numbers that, you know, cleanly divided down all the way. But again, you can pick whatever numbers you want here. I could make, you know, solo XP worth 12% and do XP worth 500%, and then trio XP worth 24%. That would be very stupid, but it would be possible, right? If we wanted to actually penalize triple XP, so that like junglers shoving waves deleted XP from the game, we could do that, but that would be kind of weird. Just saying that the tools exist, whatever. Anyway, This is primarily meant to be XP gain for bot laners. Obviously, who's going to share minions more than bot lane and support, so unsurprising what that lever is going to do. Keep in mind that it will raise the XP a little bit of mid laners anytime your support or jungle roams over and shoves the wave with you, or just happens to share a minion as it dies because they're crossing over the map, whatever. This will give a little bit of XP to other roles as well. Also keep in mind that anytime that you are a jungler and you shove a wave with your team, you get the gank or whatever, and then you shove the wave in, you're going to be getting 7% more XP when this wave is getting shoved. This is not going to be earth moving. The first implementation of this was actually, I believe, it was 128%, and we played as it for about a month. It's something that is so subtle that it's very easy to overlook, and so we kept it in the game unchanged for a full month, got sort of long-term feedback on it from our general like Masters Plus playtest that we run a couple times a day, and ultimate feedback was it felt a little too pushed, and so we went from 128 to 124. It was 126, 124, I forget, but went down to 124%. This basically puts the relative minion share of duo lane versus solo lane back to what it was for about 9 years, from about 2011 to 2020. And then over the last 3 years, like, it's been moved around a little bit, but this basically moves the ratios back to what it was for the majority of League of Legends' lifetime. So it's been this way for a while. It's going back to where it was basically back then. The second change, though, is actually strictly increasing monster XP. This is especially going to be increased from your second clear onwards. This is a level 3 camp going from 102% base XP to 125% base XP. Also taking Scuttle Crab and having it fit the new mold as well. This will be a buff until around level 10 or so. And then because we're giving a lot of XP out to bot lane, we're giving a lot of XP out to jungle via especially the early and mid game. We're actually pulling a bit of XP out of the late game here. And again, this is something we can tune and be as bespoke or gradual, whatever as we want. I chose something pretty low scope here for these changes. We tested a more aggressive number here. This was 82% for a while, and felt like it again, this has to like sit in playtest for a while to get kind of felt, but it sort of felt like it was pulling a little bit too much out. And so we moved it to 90% instead. Basically, this rule, if this isn't clear, is the amount of XP a champion gives out if the kill is assisted. So keep in mind that when you kill a champion and the kill is assisted, they give out 50% more gold. They give out usually 150 as a split assist pool. And then a interestingly compensatory function here is if the kill is assisted, it gives out less XP. It gives out more gold, gives out less XP. There's some minor things here. My understanding is that this mechanic is actually based on the killer and assister's XP, that the amount coming to you is multiplied based on what level you are. So if you are level 8, for example, you are still getting 18% less XP, even if you were assisting in like a level 15 champion kill, which makes me believe that we should probably make this sort of like smoother linear scaling or something. This didn't happen here because the goals weren't to like smooth out all the XP mechanics. It was to be very tactical. Anyway, to get back on the point, the reason why we're doing this and nerfing this at all is that in the late game, we tend to see that junglers and bot laners tend to catch up in experience overall. That on average, they're usually around 1.5 to 2 levels behind mid laners, and then top laners a little bit of mid laners, but I chose mid laner as the sort of comparison point here, and that bot laners and junglers tend to be about 1.5 to 2 levels behind mid laners, and the goal is to bridge this gap by about 0.5 levels via these changes up here. But what's interesting is once you start looking at later game experience, that 1.5 level gap shrinks, because as these champions get involved in champion combat, the amount of XP given out by high level champions, and by the way, the amount of XP given out by a champion death scales really sharply with champ level, and so when you get into late game team fights, the amount of XP given out is really, really large. And because junglers and bot laners are the most likely champs to be involved in kills and assists, they get the most kill and assist XP late game. And so, okay, cool, we can mess with champion kill XP. I explicitly went for shared kill XP as a way to not go after top laner agency. Top laners and late game assassins to a certain degree are much more likely to find solo kills. And so if we nerf late game champion kill XP, we're also nerfing the split pushing Riven, the split pushing Fiora. By nerfing shared kill XP, we're nerfing the team fight output of experience, but we're not nerfing the solo kill output of experience. And it could be that these numbers should be more aggressive, and that overall champ kills should be worth less XP when shared, and maybe a bit more XP in solo kills, and this becomes a much bigger lever. To be clear, again, these weren't initial goals, but like as an exploration of, hey, what if we chose to really make solo kills mean a whole lot more, let you snowball, we could ramp up XP, we could ramp down shared kill XP and do a bunch of stuff to try to figure that kind of stuff out. That's not where we are right now, but it's a thing that we could certainly do. And as a system that, as I interface with it more, I learn more about the rules and I'm sure there's room for there to be rules improvements here overall. Either way, that is kind of what's going on here. Flashbang warning, let's talk about the math of what actually happens here. So here is how much XP each jungle camp is worth when it's killed. It's worth noting that every single jungle camp gives you 80 free experience for killing it from having a jungle pet. You can get a little bit extra as well. I believe if they're holding treats. At least they give you extra gold. I forget if they give you extra XP if you get treats. Regardless, when doing all the math and adding in the plus 80 that is multiplied here, here is the amount of XP coming out of jungle clear. Of course, the lion's share of the buff is between level 3 and 8. The goal here is a mid-game buff. This will, again, get sort of this point around 12 or so minutes into the game, roughly. Keep in mind that camps only respawn at a new level if you kill it. So if, for example, you like never clear your Krugs, they're going to be worth, baseline level 1 XP the entire game until you finally close that camp out. And similarly, it could be like 50 minutes of the game, but there might be like a level 7 Gromp chilling here that's still worth 8% more XP than it would have otherwise. And so, at the end of the day, again, the goal is to give out some experience. And so it's basically every single camp gives, 20 to eventually only 6 more XP. Here's what Gromp looks like. Here's what Wolves look like as a full camp. Here's what Raptors looks like. Here's what Krugs look like as a full camp. And generally speaking, the larger the camp is, the less the 80 flat XP from the jungle item is involved. And so basically this disproportionately makes Krugs and Gromp more valuable because more of that camp's XP is in the baseline XP of the camp itself compared to something like Raptors where you're getting a 9% buff versus Krugs with an 11% buff, right? So here's the left side jungle or the right side jungle, and here's the north and south side jungle. We additionally get to look at jungle camp XP for buffs, which looks like this. Again, it's a buff. They're worth a decent amount. Now I want to be clear, like level 3 and 4 red buff are pretty fake. You're not going to have that level of the camp when they respawn at 7 minutes, but something more like this is going to be more reasonable. Still, again, 7 to 10% more XP, going to be pretty valuable. So this will give junglers quite a bit more experience, right? Just straight up, they're going to be higher level. The other thing, though, is that Scuttle Crab, just for consistency's sake, honestly, Scuttle Crab is overly valuable to a certain degree, is sort of what I would say here. Yeah, okay. So a couple things here. First of all, the base XP of Scuttle Crab is reduced by 80%. The first two that spawn at the very start of the game that are, 800 HP or whatever and really easy to kill, their base XP is reduced by 80%, but the jungle pet still matters. So this camp is, worth 102 XP. Like the fact that I changed from this being, 2.5% to 100%, doesn't matter here because the base XP was 20 in the first place, so it doesn't matter. And then it's when the thing actually respawns a bit later on, it's, again, only about 5-10 more experience. It's not a huge deal. It's not really going to be. And then really late game, sure, Scuttle's with a little bit less XP. Okay, fine, but keep in mind a late game Scuttle Crab is the purple crab, which means it gives you the Squire's Bloom effect and reveals all the wards. Also, Scuttle Crab uniquely scales gold income with the level of the camp, and so it still is the highest value late game camp by a lot, aside from maybe Global Red and Global Blue being just good because of the buff. But in terms of gold XP rewards, Scuttles becomes the best camp. Right, it's worth more XP than buffs, for example. Worth more golden buffs as well, and the Squire's Bloom is pretty useful when you're getting rid of all the wards around Dragon and all the wards around Baron, right? So still highly valuable. Yes, we're nerfing some late game XP. Part of that is because I think we're giving a lot of XP to junglers via all these other camps and the lane share, as well as the fact that we're still giving some here with the Scuttle Crab and whatnot. I think this is reasonable to compensate here. If it's not, okay, fine, but the goal really was to claw back some late game XP because they normally caught up anyway. The goal was to raise mid game XP. Next thing is gold streak changes. So this is how much extra bounty gold or how much gold your champion is worth when killed based on their kill streaks and based on their CS bounty. So kill streaks is like what it sounds like. When you get a kill, you are now on a 1-0 streak. When you get a second kill, you are now on a kill streak and you have a 150 gold bounty, aka you're worth 450 when you are killed. That is being reduced by 50. If you get your third kill in a row, instead of having 300 gold bounty, it's a 500 gold bounty, and it remains at minus 100 gold for the rest of the time. Your max bounty is still 700, so instead of going to what is a 7 kill streak, it's a 8 kill streak to get to that level of bounty. You can still have somebody worth plus 700, that's not changing. But basically, individual champion kills, when you are the winner, when you are the one doing very well, is going to be worth 50 to 100 less when you are killed. And so this helps your individual snowball agency go up a little bit, because if you're the 6-0 Master Yi, you're going to give away 100 less gold if you die. Okay, great. The CS bounty system, basically under the hood, the way it works is, I believe it's since you last died, how much gold you have earned from farming relative to how much gold the average opponent has earned from farming, do a bunch of math, give you a bounty based on those numbers. What it boils down to is, hey, you're going to accrue bounty more slowly because instead of requiring 200 additional gold farmed per 50 gold, it's 250 additional gold farmed per 50 gold income. So you are going to essentially have, if you're farming really, really well and you have 12 CS a minute, you're going to have less of a bounty on your head just overall. So basically, players who are doing well are going to have smaller bounties on their heads. A way to siphon some gold out of the game in a delicate way that allows you to feel good if you're the one who's carrying. I think this overall system can be softer. We did a lot to reduce snowballing in the game a while back. We have some room to put some back in, and putting it back in, saying that you're doing really well, you're going to give up less, I think is very reasonable to do and to hand out. The final change is actually on the other side of it. This will actually, I guess, lower snowballing some, which is the amount of gold that you give out when you are death streaking is going to go down somewhat. And so I wrote it in as the actual numbers themselves because it's probably just the right way of explaining it in patch notes. Technically, there is a number that changed from 0.2 to 0.25, which was your gold decrement by death. No one knows what this means. It doesn't matter. Essentially, this is the table that you should care about. And so you're going to give away less gold when you die. We can do a data table on this one as well. So here's champion kill streak gold, right? Again, if you have an 8 kill streak, you're still worth 1,000 total gold on kill. But in any given these cases where you're, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, you're going to give, 50, 100 less gold on death. Congratulations. Here's the death streak gold stuff. Again, at a certain point, you're just worth 100 gold no matter what. When you're 0 and 7, it's still the same. But if you're 0 and 6, it was, now you hit the break point a little bit sooner. And this is basically, if you really were going to kill someone until they went 0 and 8, you just completely chain slammed them, you're only getting 90 less gold. Like, the amount this is giving away is pretty small. We could maybe go harsher here, I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're chain killing somebody, they're worth a little bit less gold. And so we're taking a little bit of gold out of the game because we're giving a little bit more XP. And the goal here is, again, slightly raising champion durability. And being aware of things like top laners having to have agency, who tends to get the gold and experience. Part of this is the fact that we know we're giving more XP to bot laners, we know we're giving more XP to junglers. They tend to catch up late game, and so because they're involved in champion kills more often, and we lower the value of champion kills, they get a little less gold, they get a little bit less going on there. So very minor changes here, but these are all going to have some little impact on the game. Move on to champion changes, and we are shipping a Corki rework. I guess I'll call it a rework, whatever. We don't have official titling here. We just did a Corki kit update. I headlined this, worked on it off and on since February, I think, or March. I don't remember. Whatever. Either way, basically placing Corki as a primary physical damage AD auto attack caster hybrid, so a little bit more auto attacky than Ezreal, but not that far off. It's still something that looks kind of like that. A little bit more castery than Xayah, for example. Meant to be early game skewed, playable in bot as well as mid, meant to be cooperative, and meant to be a relatively easy to play lane bully because there aren't very many of those. Generally speaking, that's his sort of tactical or strategic sort of niche. But again, on sort of gameplay tactics, a hybrid of auto attacks and spell casting, trying to weave them both together. So some base stat changes, not much to say here, basically skewing some of his stats towards early game. So health skewed towards early game, armor skewed towards early game. Base AD is lowered because he gets functionally free AD via the new passive, so this is kind of fake. In order to play up the attack speed fantasy, playing up his base attack speed ratio a little bit here, giving him some extra mana regen growth to make him not need mana mune quite as much. We're also raising some mana costs here. He'll probably still go mana mune, that's fine, but just calling out that, maybe he has the ability to skip on some mana items here if he wants to. Some minor under the hood stuff, identifying that this champion probably hasn't had his animations tuned since 2009, and so I looked under the hood for what the animations are and at what point it probably felt reasonable for them to actually fire, and so I retimed his basic attack animation and his Q animation to look a bit more appropriate. Technically, he's gonna have slightly slower auto attacks. You will basically not feel this. Once you're at Zerk Greaves, you almost can't mechanically cancel your autos in time. Like if you right click onto the ground really quickly, you almost can't auto it. You're given like a 1 or 2 frame grace period in the engine of not canceling autos when it's about to be done. All minor stuff here. Anyway, we can talk about the numbers when it comes time to it, but regardless, skewing his stats towards early game, lightly reinforcing auto attacking, okay, great. Package is gone. That's the big thing that's really pro skewed. Turns out a 5 or 6 minute cooldown window is exactly timing with when pro tends to team fight. This just made him get locked in pro jail, which really sucks because this champ is cool. And overall, just converting him back to the old passive, sort of, which is physical and true damage. And I want to point one thing out here. This is my fault for not putting in the patch notes. I guess, so to be fair, his old passive did convert Sheen into full magic damage. this is indeed going to do the same thing, where it's going to take Sheen and give it 15% bonus true damage. So in terms of the actual kit interactions, this is still like accurate. It does in fact work with Sheen because the old passive worked with Sheen. But the old Corki from 2010 did not deal bonus damage on Sheen. You have to special case it in the Sheen scripting itself. I went in and changed the scripting around it. But essentially, and it's going to say it in his tooltip, in his passive, but Corki auto works with basic attacks, with crits. It works cleanly with Hurricane. It just knows the math. And it will explicitly work with Spellblade, Sheen, Trinity Force, whatever, and it calls it out in tooltip. So it does not make Blade of the Rune King better. It does not make Wit's End better. It does not make whatever else better, Eclipse or whatever, but it's specifically Sheen effects, and it cares if you crit or not. So those are the interactions here, and so those are kind of the spaces, right? IE and Triforce are both meant to be good on this champion. A pretty big damage reshape on Foster's Bomb. So Light Thing is a cooldown reshape, a little bit, harsher early game, a little bit better late game, making the rank of instead of not quite so bad again, trying to let him skip Mana Mune and just build regular items a little bit sooner to let him essentially be allowed to build crit builds was kind of the idea here. But regardless, Q is losing 5 to 25 base damage, but gaining a whopping 50% bonus AD ratio. Now, again, 100 bonus AD is going to take a while to get there. That's the break even, right? Minus 50 bonus AD, minus 25 base damage, plus 50 bonus AD ratio is 50 bonus AD. So it's like Trinity Force, Doran's Blade, Doran's Blade runes. So, add about one item, congratulations, plus your cooldown's better, of course. So Foster's Bomb is meant to be strictly buffed as a button. Keep in mind, he's literally losing power here via the package. But the point here is that Q is meant to feel like it's no longer a waste of the kit. That had been feedback for a while. We had to keep pushing. You might have seen the PB units kept getting updated on Q. But now at 100% bonus AD ratio, we think Q is actually strong enough. So just trying to make sure that it actually feels good to cast, because we want to make sure his autos and his shorter range tools like Q and E and W actually feel like good pieces here. Siphoning power off are somewhat to do this, and so trying to make sure that Q actually feels good to cast. Again, mana cost is down, missile speed up about 10%. This is still pretty dodgeable, but considering that Q is a travel missile, the closer you are to your target, the easier it is to land. This is basically unmissable at short range if you do go in a nearly melee range here. Again, retimed the point in the animation that it fires, cast time unchanged, but again, more damage, better cooldown late game, bigger part of the power budget, right? And package is gone, so of course we have to find power somewhere. Valkyrie, mana cost doesn't really matter. I just like having mana costs actually scale on abilities. I just think it's relevant and worth doing, so it's there. Technically, the base damage hasn't changed in the spell or the AP ratio, but the fact that it's been rescripted to have a 1 second linger and actually more appropriately deal damage, this makes it be a substantial damage increase. In most of your best case scenarios, there's like 10% damage increase. In many cases where you land W and they run away, you're going to get like double, sometimes maybe even probably not triple damage, but maybe triple damage, because you're going to deal half-second damage chunks, and you're often going to get 2 chunks even after they leave the zone. This is going to be a fairly big deal, and so Valkyrieing forward is going to be heavily benefiting from this line. Basically, this allows that for Valkyrie to mean a lot, because even if they run away, you're going to guarantee yourself 1.5 seconds of the burn, which is a pretty big deal for something that I believe lasts 4 seconds normally. So you get almost half the spell, and the spell is like 150 base damage, by the way. So it's a lot of damage to land Valkyrie forward. And meanwhile, it's going to be the same spell if you're running away, basically. In fact, it can be weaker because it basically has a damage cap and won't deal damage to you after you're done. So some under the hood stuff there, just to say, hey, we're going to really try to actually get the maximum damage here. I just think it's a good way of doing stuff here. Retune some particle effects, retune some damage effects on the particles as well, to make the games look a little bit nicer, make the skill look a little bit nicer. They're still pretty old particles and whatnot, but should overall be a nice looking spell. And so a lot of under the hood stuff that you wouldn't think changes the damage, but actually changes the damage a pretty meaningful amount. Next up is Gatling Gun. Again, trying to convert him into a physical damage champion. So instead of half magic, half physical, it's all physical. He still shreds armor and MR. The number is going up. The cooldown is going down. This basically says, hey, Gatling Gun is a much higher uptime shred spell. It still shreds armor and MR. Keep in mind, Corki Q is still magic damage. Corki W is still magic damage. And he's often going to be laning with magic damage teammates. If he's playing in bot lane, he's got a Lux or a Zyra, or even like a Rel or Leona still does meaningful magic damage. And so saying, yeah, he's still going to shred both resists, because the point here is to be cooperative. We're taking some base damage down. We're taking some AD ratio down. He's going to be less of a selfish damage tool and more about setting up the rest of his kit and more about everything else. Honestly, Gatling Gun could deal almost any damage in the world, and it wouldn't really matter, because you can't keep it 100% uptime in most cases anyway. And as long as it's reliably doing the shred thing, it's doing a useful thing for the button. So we probably could have even nerfed Gatling Gun even further and given more to the Q or more to something else. And I think people wouldn't have really noticed, because Gatling Gun is doing multiple things anyway. And people aren't expecting to get all the damage, so if they low roll, it like doesn't matter anyway, is sort of my read here, but maybe that's wrong. Regardless, again, really playing up his cooperative strengths here to make sure that it can feel good. So it's going to reach shred cap much sooner, which of course will feed back into the damage. The fact that right there's more shred, the shred cap hits sooner, and the cooldown's lower means that all these things like basically reinforce the base damage, and so the like total damage output of E per game might actually be going higher as a result. The only thing to point out though is that by converting to physical damage, that is a very substantial damage nerf because people have less MR than they have armor, and so there's like more damage than red on this tooltip because of all these buffs, but less damage than the tooltip because of this nerf here, right? So a bunch of stuff going on here. Either way, math. And then the final set of changes are to Missile Barrage. This is basically converting it from a total AD ratio to a bonus AD ratio. I know it's not written here. This was a transcription error, but essentially this means that the base damage, though it looks like it's up by 0 to 130, not having 75% of your base AD, which is 75 or so damage, means the base damage is not nearly as buffed as you think. Of course, the bonus AD ratio a little bit lower than the level 16 old AD ratio. AP ratio is gone. Willingness was honestly a bait the entire time anyway. W was basically unusable. R had such a low ratio it didn't matter, and Q was a crappy spell anyway, and 0.5 was not a good enough ratio. So this is just saying no, there's really not AP Corki. Don't try. It's not good. We did buff the Q ratio back up. That's cute, but like it again, this is not actually going to be good. With W being more reliable and Q being better, you shouldn't play AP Corki. The point's not there. But increasing the mana cost, lowering the max ammo, lowering the ammo recharge to say, no, if you're going to sit in max range and just throw out Rs, you're going to get very little out of this ability. But instead, what you're going to get is an auto attack reset, which is going to be pretty valuable. Generally speaking, we tried to find numbers where once you got to about 2 or 3 items, you felt you could go infinite in Missile Barrage in a team fight. And so there were a lot of numbers we tried. The thing is, this scales off haste. This scales off crit chance, and it scales off attack speed. And they all multiply each other. There's 3 mods that all scale multiplicatively, and so you can very quickly go from I can't go infinite to I can go infinite, and that breakpoint is based almost entirely on gold and not on level, right? Your recharge rate doesn't scale off rank anymore. You gain some AS per level, but it's only like 2.4%. You don't get ability haste per level, right? Like none of those things matter. And so it's gold scaling is how you go infinite on R, not level scaling here. You also get an extra ammo when you level for the first time, just to make you feel a little bit better. Congratulations. You get to feel cooler about Missile Barrage, and you get to like, I hit level 6, I have an ultimate, and you actually like kind of have an ultimate where you get 2 shots, and it only takes a few autos to recharge your third. Kind of reasonable here. So let's go ahead and, and also it's doing physical damage here. I realize it's not mentioned here. That's another transcription error here. But the damage on R has been converted to physical damage. And so that is, of course, a very big deal, but worth noting that that is a thing. So sorry for the flashbang. Oh yeah, here was champion kill XP. I realized that was a while ago, but you can see that it's down 10% late game. Yes, indeed. Let's move on. So here is Corki's durability stats, right? Here is his base health before and after. Now this does not count rune shards, which he's typically running, nor does it count a Doran's Blade Start, which would add 100 here as well. That's fine. It's, again, roughly here, level 13 breakpoint. This is generally going to be slightly a buff. That's fine. Using armor as part of the calculation as well. The breakpoint's still the same, but ultimately, yeah, you can survive like 7% more physical damage early game. That can be really meaningful when you're going for level 1, level 2 all in, going for really heavy trade, Valkyrie forward, trying to take a big fight, right? So here is Corki's base AD, which is just like here. This is your damage to minions with no runes, no nothing. This is like, I came out of the game, I picked the wrong rune page. Oops. Just how much base AD do I have as a champion? This is kind of fake, but who cares? And so what it is, yeah, it turns out when you deal 15% more damage as true damage, you in fact have more base AD than before. And the base AD is actually higher late game because we didn't nerf the AD growth on the champion. We could if we really needed to buy even more late game skew away or mid lane skew away. Didn't think we had to, but it's there. So yes, if you don't buy, and keep in mind, right, this is pure upside. If you buy a longsword, you're getting 11.5 AD out of it. So your minion damage is literally always higher, just full stop, right? Okay, great. So next is your actual damage autoing against Jinx. There's a whole bunch of math here, right? We can go in and look at all the math here. Physical hit, magical hit, basically, I believe this is without counting the shred, but this is counting his actual itemization via the fact that you're seeing his AD go up by a lot. Essentially by saying, okay, here's the most common bot leader in the game. Her name is Jinx, and she doesn't buy armor or MR in almost any of her builds. And so if I port my build over from yesterday to today, and I buy the same items, and we just change all my base stats and all my scalings, how much auto attack damage am I doing before and after against Jinx? And it is massively better in the early game. This is accounting for armor and MR. This is accounting for runes. This is accounting for items. This is accounting for everything else. But just what is my damage per auto, no crit, no sheen, And it's this. It is, I literally deal more auto attack damage to the champion, as well as the fact that Corki has 1% more total attack speed via the base stat change from a while ago. So Corki is a better auto attacker when auto attacking squishies, full stop. Now that goes down when they choose to be an armor stacker. People tend to buy armor more than they buy MR, so his ability to kill frontlines is going to be going down because it's just going to be worse against tankier targets. I did not choose that. I did not do some numbers here, but it's worth noting that what this does is it buffs him early game and treads water late game. Okay, move on to the Corki damage. Here is the damage per cast on Q, even with the -5 base damage. The 50% AD ratio increase makes up for it at 10 bonus AD. That's just Dorn's Blade, plus stat shards exist. And so basically at all points in time, Q is always doing more damage. This is tooltip damage. This is not against MR, because no matter how much MR they have, the ratio is the same before and after. But yes, at level 18, you have a 550 tooltip damage Q, which is of course a very, very meaningful increase overall. And this is largely locked behind gold scaling, right? The actual rank scaling got worse to the tune of 5 damage per rank. But as you get more items and more gold, your Q does get better. Yes, this gives Corki some late game, understandably here in the Q, but this is to actually make Q feel like it's not garbage when you get into 2 to 3 item territory, which it had the trouble of doing before. Plus the cooldown buff means not only you're getting 20% more damage per cast, but you're also getting 12% more casts, so a really significant bump in how much the Q matters. And here's Corki's power budget. This is probably the single biggest buff in the kit, is like up to 30% more Q damage, which is a very, very big deal. Okay, so now we do the E real damage. And so this is, I don't know why I have this twice. Let me double check what I'm even looking at here. I don't remember, actually. What am I looking at? Yeah, this is, okay, sorry. This is E damage and then real damage. Okay, so this is tooltip damage. This is minion damage here on the E before and after. And so if you're just like sitting there pointing at a wave and just dealing tooltip DPS here, this is what you're doing. And obviously the damage is down pretty meaningfully, or it's down 17 to 15%. This obviously matters quite a bit. Yep, your damage is down, okay. And then here is the math accounting for the fact that we are shredding our typical target. To make the math more simplified, I just said you're always max shred at all times. That's obviously a little bit fake, but whatever. And you can see what happens here is it ends up being a late game nerf, because by converting to physical damage, people have more armor, even though your shred is higher, you're just dealing less damage overall. This is one of the several places in which Corki's late game is going to get worse by not dealing magic damage. It's low-key one of the big strengths of Corki passive was that you secretly did a ton of damage because people only had like 60 base MR at level 18, and meant that when most of your damage is magic damage, you just shred through them despite getting to scale on all the normal multiplicative AD carry scaling multipliers. That was actually really, really very, very strong, and was like low-key why he was so good late game, but in a way that's kind of invisible. By making it true damage, it's actually less good late game, but feels way better to use. Even though the math, as pointed out here, actually isn't that much better against even a non-tank, and it gets worse against a real tank until you buy like LDR or something. So again, this is the actual damage per cast against Jinx. Now, again, keep in mind that the E cooldown is dropped from 16 to 12. So you're getting, what, 4/3 as many casts. And so you're actually in a pretty similar ballpark here. So if you can afford the mana and get back in a combat range, the theoretical DPS of E is the same or maybe even better, but the damage per cast is definitely lower. So now here we go to the tooltip damage of R, assuming, again, just converting his build before and after. What I used here, by the way, was the most common 4-item mid Corki build that didn't include Malignance, and has said that that's going to be the default build that we're just going to pretend you're going to use for the rest of for all these comparisons, and said, okay, well, if you're going to do that full AD Corki build before and after, here is the tooltip damage on R before and after. You can see that damage is in fact higher, but it's physical damage, and that matters against your real target. So here is your real damage against Jinx. And I believe once again here, I am counting the E shred on the math, because Corki's not meant to be just full long range poke, he's meant to be in mid range. You can debate that if you want, that's fine, but you can see the actual impact is that no, R is not actually stronger here. So yes, there are a lot of things here that are in the red. The R is actually dealing less damage than before, but you can go infinite in fights if you can auto attack. The E is dealing less damage than before, but you are shredding for your teammates more, and it's up more often. Your Q is just strictly better. Your autos are generally going to be just strictly better. So right, better autos, better Q, changed E, changed to arguably worse R, right? That's overall the math on the changes here. The point, again, is to have a fun, approachable lane bully, bot lane, mid lane marksman that has a fun, compelling hybrid auto attack caster profile that hopefully is fun. I went updated his recommended builds so that you will usually see a caster option and a crit option at all points in time. You'll see Zerk Greaves as well as cooldown boots. You will not see Void Staff. You will not see Malignance. So unless something went weird and the recommendations got overwritten, which shouldn't happen based on what I know of the system, Corki will see like pretty solid recommended builds, and then once data tells us what the actual best builds are, we'll just more heavily recommend the correct builds, in the way that Skarner gained like 6% win rate largely off of optimizing his builds by putting the right recommended items in. Very small change to Cho'Gath here. The damage cap against minions is gone. The damage cap against monsters is much higher. This does not really affect his first clear, but it's some like minor cleanup to say congratulations, your late game clears against camps really fast. Have fun. Cassante was in a sort of hidden, not hidden so much, but a part of the patch notes that people thought was not going to be that impactful, or at least many people didn't. Cassante became larger and easier to click on and easier to hit with skill shots last patch, and that actually was worth about 1.5% win rate. But because he wasn't in the patch notes in this section called Nerfs, people overlooked it and was like, wait, why are you buffing Cassante? He's already like the most picked top laner at MSI. But of course, MSI aren't playing on the patch where Cassante tanks skill shots more and just simply takes more damage. So understandable why there's confusion there, but that's the reason. This champion got nerfed by more than we think he needs. And so we're giving him some buffs, being like, well, you are a large target. You are mechanically as large as Braum and Bard and Gragas and other very large humanoid characters, because he is. That's how big he looks in game. This makes sense for his model. And so we're giving him, because he's now a big champion, we're giving him essentially big champion tank stat growth. It's still not the highest health growth in the game. It's not the highest health regen level 18 in the game either. But saying, well, we literally made you easier to damage. Let's make you more durable as a result. Additionally, a decent portion of top lane Cassante players, around, I think like 18%, max E second over W. It's not terribly close in power level, and so choosing to give this button better rank scaling to let E max second be less of a trap. We don't want to make this optimal. The goal is not to make it optimal. I don't believe these numbers will make it optimal, but giving 0 to 40 extra shield is going to say that maxing at second is going to be a little bit nicer. And then again, just some generic tank stats because he got easier to hit. So we can do some math here on Cassante. Here is his base health before and after, not accounting for runes. Here is his regen per minute before and after, not accounting for runes, Doran Shield, things like that. It's a small buff, but it's going to mean something. This is usually a bit under 1% win rate. This is going to be a little bit less than that still, and this is going to be some amount, especially for the people who are maxing E second. We can do the math on E second as well. Here's the base value. The math isn't surprising. Here is it with our expectation of skill ranks and item income, and we're around here. So okay, great. There's the champion. There's the numbers. Set getting a similar change to Cho'Gath, getting a jungle mod put in here. Yeah, he has some flat damage to monsters. Okay, great. He's gonna have a slightly nicer clear. Have fun trying to play Set jungle. Skarner is now overpowered. We set a bunch of changes in last patch, which included, I believe, updating his recommended runes and such, and that swung really, really, really hard on his power level. This champion is, generally speaking, just way too strong now. Over the last week, his Emerald Plus win rate is a bit over 52% win rate, I believe. He is now. It might be that long-term Skarner, because people love this term for whatever reason, it might be that long-term Skarner is wholesome Chungus and he's allowed to be, 51% jungler guy, and it's fine and people don't mind it. I don't think that's true in his current shape of the kit right now, but like Poppy jungle's been this good for a while and no one thinks Poppy is broken or anything. So, we still have to wait and see how players feel. Like even in Skarner's current state where he's like very clearly overpowered, his banner is still going down by day, even in high elo. Now, again, we should still nerf him. I'm pretty confident in that. But anyway, the point here is to nerf Skarner. So there's actually several sets of changes here. So first up are a set of jungle nerfs with hopeful, fingers crossed, minor compensation for Skarner top. Skarner's top pick rate is plummeting, largely because I think it's just actually weak. I think getting it back to playable in top without just being like go back to WMAC, which I don't think is correct for the champion at all, might be kind of difficult, but we can solve that down the line whenever is required. But essentially, just going after a bunch of Skarner's flat damage, not his target max health damage, but specifically his damage that kills squishies. So it is damage per hit on Q going down via the bonus HP ratio. It is damage on E going down via his max health ratio. And then as some compensation, then another jungle nerf is just the monster mod on Q going down, because it's free real estate, whatever. It's just a way of getting jungle winner without hitting, top literally at all. But then saying, okay, well, let's do some top compensations. We know that top Skarner can have mana issues. Let's go ahead and make Q nearly free. A lot of our champions end up getting like relatively inexpensive auto attack reset buttons. Q is not the same thing as Wukong Q, don't get me wrong, but it's the kind of skill we tend to let be free because often reasonably windowed. The rock throw, I want to be clear, is not exactly a windowed skill. It is poke, and I don't know how to solve being a hard melee champion with a long-range skill shot with Karma Q. I don't know. This is his kit. We'll have to figure it out over time. I don't know the answer right now, but it's not perfect. I understand that. And being like, hey, well, you can have your structure mod back at 100% because you never get the max health damage in structure anyway. Maybe he's allowed to have it. I don't know, but this just says like, hey, your 3 hits that deal, 50 damage plus, 4% bonus HP, they'll deal full damage instead. Congratulations, have fun here. Like, just, we don't need the complexity, right? It's fine. So, right, cheaper mana cost, better structure damage, jungle only nerf, and of course a nerf that clearly affects top lane as well. E, of course, clearly affects top lane as well. Yeah, of course that happens. But the next up is, this is meant to be more as a sort of reshape here, where Skarner is no longer unstoppable while winding up Impale. Now, I am not 100% confident this is the right choice for the champion. There are other Juggernaut/tank champions who are unstoppable during their cast animations. Illaoi are an example of this, where when she jumps up and does the slam, she is unstoppable during the jump up and slam, which means you can use it to immune Buster Shot, congratulations, but you're going to land in this circle, people around you are going to get hit, but not every, like, long cast time fighter spell is like this, or tank spell is like this. Obviously, if you are a fighter with an ulti dash, it's unstoppable. Warwick R is unstoppable while flying out. Vi R is unstoppable. Wukong, sorry, your spin, you can get knocked out of your spin. You're going to lose part of it. It's going to happen to you, right? Like, you have things on either side of this one that work this way. But ultimately, having a long duration unstoppable felt incorrect to me. In my opinion, having the ability to counterplay the Impale a little bit through some kind of knockback and whatnot, I thought was correct here. But understanding that was going to make the reliability of the spell be lower, buff the cast time by 0.1 seconds, so that you got some reliability in some cases, but you also got just sort of like game systemic cleanliness, sort of like make sensitude is not a word, I know that. Just have it be a little bit cleaner through that lens, which I thought was worthwhile, which I thought was valuable, and so we're making this change here. Now, it could be that Skarner players are like, wow, I can never land R anymore. And I know there were some Impale cast times in testing, like at 0.5, it was too fast, and it felt like there was no counterplay. He would just always Impale 3 people. He would like flash R and you'd lose. And so there's somewhere in the middle here where the numbers are probably going to be correct. It's okay if ultis miss. It's fine. Hoi R can do literally nothing, and you've got to deal. It's just how the ability works. Mordekaiser can ult somebody who can beat him. Like, it's okay to have ults that fail. It's not sacred that R is reliable. That was understood when it became a skill shot, when it became multi-target, is that there's going to be good ults and bad ults, and that's just how the game works. And we'll keep an eye on it, of course, but this is obviously going to change reliability to some degree. Moving on, though, to Tryndamere. Tryndamere is getting updated because he, Yasuo, and Yone are all getting updated because a bunch of crit items are changing. It is 25% crit chance per item, and so their underlying crit chance is going to be, you can max out at 2 items, congratulations. Viego is getting a lane Viego buff. We're re-adding some of the Mark healing versus minions to let him feel good to play mid lane and top lane. We expect this to be a bit over like 1.5% win rate. Theoretically, Viego right now is a 50% win rate mid laner for those who actually play him. Of course, that biases really extremely towards people who are experienced in champion because no one thinks to play Viego mid for the most part. We'll see. There's understanding here that Viego mid could become overpowered and overbearing, so we'll keep an eye on him, but essentially trying to bring back Viego lane, go have fun, cool champion. Yasuo and Yone, as mentioned, just updating so that they, match at 50% crit. Okay, great. On to the items. We're doing the corrupting portion of the game. Basically, not a lot to say here that isn't, really been said. We chose to not make it a strong item when we buffed all the other Doran's items, that they're really good now. Go have fun. Go buy these. They're good. They're very good. We didn't want really strong version of corrupting potion ultimately, and so we took stock of like how strong are we willing to let corrupting potion be, how does it compare to the other starting items, and it's just clearly not worth it, and so why have the shot float? Get rid of it. Enchanter items. So this wasn't really a project of let's go look at Enchanter items. This ended up being a bunch of different individual things that LivePod took on that ended up being several Enchanter items. So Dawn Core was explicitly something that we knew was not hitting the mark and wasn't getting a large player base. And so we did some brainstorming. We had like a brainstorming session, and there were a couple pitches for what Dawn Core could be. This ended up being my suggestions. The designer who initially grabbed the Dawn Core ticket implemented something very, very similar to this. And then he went off to go do arena balance. And so I inherited like the final touches here, which was like, I moved like 3 numbers around, and then, you know, this was the item, right? And so the point here is that Dawn Core should, you know, feel a little bit capstone. It should feel a little bit like Death Cap for enchanters. And explicitly be like, this is the item that just gives you the strongest per button press heals and shields. And feedback from what I've seen from players who are playtesting it was that they didn't think it was going to be very good, and then they pressed the buttons and they're like, wow, this feels way better than I thought it would. Because what this item ultimately gives you is like 90 ability power and like 22 heal and shield power. That is a massive buff to every single Nami W and Sonar W that you press. It is a ton of power in individual heals and shields, plus it amplifies all the other weird kit hooks. So getting 90 ability power on Nami makes the bouncing better on the W. It makes the damage output on the E better, and the damage output on like her Q and R don't really matter, but it makes those better as well. It makes the attack speed buff on things like Whimsy better. It makes the move speed buff on Melio E better. And it turns out that we've gotten to the point where ability power is a real stat on many enchanters, and not just how much they heal and how much they shield, but how much they other things as well. And as long as those numbers are in rough alignment, that these enchanters don't become mages, because I don't think that's correct for them, or at least they are sharing reasonably well, then we get into a pretty good spot of an item that makes you get really, really juicy spells. Okay, so yeah, the way the math works out, we'll do the math in a second. First Light is essentially being side graded from giving a little less heal and shield power to a little bit more ability power. Okay, whatever. It's getting rid of the Summoner Spell Haste, getting rid of the ability haste. So the only unique passive is First Light, which is still tuned to be relatively strong. The base stats are massively higher, and again, the regen self feeds into it. I intentionally lowered the base mana regen below what it was before to have this as low as possible, so that the tooltip numbers can be as high as possible. Because the thing about Dawn Core is it is always much, much stronger than the numbers look, because this is automatically at 300% if you buy any realistic scenario. Your support item gives you 75. This item itself gives you 100, and you're usually buying it second slot at the earliest, which means you've got Imperial Mandate or Moonstone or something else giving you another 125. So at baseline, you have 3x these numbers, which means this item actually has 90 ability power, not 60, which means it has 22 heal and shield power, not 16. But like, there's not a good way to account for this somewhere else. We could do some weird stuff and say like heal and shield power not from the item, and like buff the other numbers and like lie to you, and like we could do a bunch of really weird stuff here that I don't think is really worth it. But like, worth noting, worth understanding, like that is kind of how the way the math works out, right? Okay. Additionally, we did Echoes of Helia. This was, again, very actually low scope. There were 2 versions. One was just buffing the per stack value. The other one being like, well, actually, the low scope version here is lower the number of stacks, buff the per stack value straight up, and then just go have fun. The idea being that, yeah, it's actually hard to get 3 stacks in most enchanter patterns, so just let it stack to full power more quickly, and then you can offload your power much, much, much more often. If you are getting 3 stacks every time anyway, this doesn't really change. This is 135 becomes 120. This is 120 becomes 150, so the total throughput is relatively similar, but you know, most of the time you're not getting 3 stacks per hit, so anytime you're getting only 1 or 2 stacks, this item is just like very clearly almost like twice as good on healing and clearly better on damage as well. So a very, very large buff to Echoes. The primary gain here is actually in the pattern. It feels like you're not leaving stuff on the table, and so is going to feel a lot better. And then Shirley's Battle Song just is OP right now. This is another item that's propping up some Janna win rate, but also this item was getting what we thought was over-poached in solo lanes, and so just bringing down the selfish stats, 3% off of the move speed, 5% or 5 flat off the ability power. Congratulations. So let's look at the numbers real quick. We can do some quick comparisons. Here is Skarner damage. I forgot to talk about these. So here's how much damage comes out of all 3 autos plus the rock throw of Q before and after. You know, very, very early on doesn't really matter, but as you go down the line, you're getting, 6% less damage or so out of the bonus damage on Q. The E damage actually down a pretty substantial 15%. It's going to be pretty meaningful there as well. So definitely some damage downgrades. And again, this is damage downgrade in non-percent HP damage sources. So this is disproportionately, he's going to be worse at killing squishies. but his target agnosticism through things like his passive and his rock throw are not going down in any meaningful way. Here's the math on the Viego regen. This is like basically taking his base health regen as a champion and saying how many passives are you going to trigger per minute on minions here. This is accounting for what his current most common builds are on live right now. And yeah, if you're autoing like double shot on 3 minions a wave, you have 40% more regen. If you're getting double shot on, once on every single minion, every single wave, it's, 70% more regen. Obviously, like late game regen doesn't really matter here, right? Like at a certain point, who cares what your level 12 regen is? I mean, it can matter because it's staying between waves, but like meh. So yeah, I mean, this matters, right? Like this is a champ getting a lot more regen in lane, and this can certainly mean a lot here. Okay, finally we go and talk about some math. One we did real math on was Dawncore. So yeah, old Dawncore, and by the way, we're not going to price the mana regen because it's kind of a fake stat anyway. Old Dawncore was at 350% mana regen, which was, again, you have Mandate, you have Support Item, you have Dawncore done. You were 94% gold efficient, and then further items were a little bit better, and you had Summoner Spell Haste, which is like cute, but like 94% with eventual upside is not a real item. Like that's a pretty bad item because upside is pretty mediocre. You get another 260 gold per slot. Okay, great. Meh. You get like 10% more out of your further items. I don't care. Summoner Spell Haste, just not that big of a deal, honestly, for enchanters. So yeah, I mean, unsurprisingly, this item is kind of weak. If you were targeting it at, second legendary, which, maybe is fraudulent, but again, it only uses 265 extra gold per slot. Like, it's just not that much better anyway, right? Now you go to the new Dawncore, and it's 110% on first slot. Okay, or sorry, second legendary, right? Much better as long as you are valuing things like heal and shield power and ability haste the way that I am. I am pricing ability haste at 40 gold per point. I'm pricing AP the way that Amptome prices it. And I'm actually underpricing heal and shield power because I think much like Glowing Moat, what is it called? The not Ether Wisp. I always forget what the mana regen one that gives you heal and shield power is called. Either way, I think that item is overpriced, and so I price heal and shield power at 550, not 67.5 or whatever. Regardless, all this is just like gold efficiency is a fake stat because how much you care about heal and shield power is a very personal based on your champion interaction. And yeah, we can use gold as ways of pricing items, but also like, I don't know. It's gold value. Like, it's kind of hard to compare. So regardless, even though I am personally undercounting the value of heal and shield power by a huge amount, and this item has twice as much heal and shield power, this item is, incredibly more gold efficient, and then again still has the upside late game of First Light, which I think makes this item quite good, right? This item is now 110% with upside long term, giving about 300 gold or so per further purchase, which I think is pretty reasonable. This to me feels relatively death cap like, right? You're getting more like 15% more per item that you're buying, which is pretty close when death cap, usually the items you buy are about half ability power, half other things. Well, 40% of half is 20%, which is, hey, not that far off of the gold efficiency of sort of this conversion as well. So that's kind of all the math here, right? Like, this is all kind of in my head when fine-tuning numbers at the very end, but yeah. We move on to tank items. This was, again, also live pod doing it. I ended up doing the implementation work on the tank items here as well. The initial drive was basically saying, hey, hey, health items kind of suck. And so I basically wrote down what all the tank items were and what they provided and their relative, like, durability gold efficiencies. I think tank stat gold efficiency is a reasonably okay metric, but like how, what is the budget of each item in terms of how much durability it's providing, how much other stuff it's providing, like how tanky are tank items actually, and what are they giving you overall, and how good are they? And one thing I noticed was that a lot of items gave a ton of health, which meant that pure health items were not very good because you already had a bunch of HP, and so like not only did you need this stat in the first place, but the actual like tank value of health items was quite low, and that other items just had more tank stats on them. So did a pretty significant sort of like efficiency and tank stats providing pass and try to make them all good. So Anathemas is the first one, which is getting deleted from the game. Basically, there were versions that we could have chosen to ship here, but what it came down to was that Anathemas was actually not an item that we were willing to support as good. Like right now, Anathemas is super niche, and a couple of players every patch are like, oh, this feels like an Anathemas angle, and it's like okay on them and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a version of Anathemas that's actually good, that players would be willing to buy more than 1 out of every 300 games. We didn't think it was going to be good for the game League of Legends. That none of the current outputs of Anathemas are something actually we really wanted to support as powerful enough to be worth doing. And so instead of having like a vestigial fake unique passive and then like real stats, we said this item is just not worth keeping around, we can just make a different item if we want to make some other health stat stick with some other kind of unique passive. If you're going to replace the passive, it's not anathemas, right? So what it comes down to is we weren't willing to support this item, and so we deleted it. Warlock is getting a very, very large buff of 250 health. That's a big deal. That is a lot. That is a lot. Absolutely it is. This basically puts Warmogs, we can look at the math here, at from 73 to 94% gold efficient. Now, of course, that's if you consider move speed a tank stat. It's 80% gold efficient in raw tank stats. Of course, you're getting health as well. That's great. You're getting out of combat regen, and you're getting some out of combat move speed, which you probably don't want to actually value the same as you want to value in combat always on move speed, but okay, whatever. The question is, right, at the overversions item, was this ever actually a good item here? Like, you didn't care about this. And then, okay, did you really want to spend 900 gold in out of combat regen? The answer might be yes, but like, of course one wants this item. Why would you buy this item? This item is trash. And so now this item is like, yeah, you are paying for these lines, but like, you're paying a very small amount for these lines now. You're like getting gold efficient move speed and health, and then like, here's a sweetener. This item is actually not completely trash. Go have fun. This item is good now. Great. Similar with Fimbulwinter. Fimbulwinter was also in a spot where it was actually kind of bad. It was partially also tied to using your shield with Ingenious Hunter, but otherwise the item wasn't actually very good. And so Fimbulwinter is now a very good generic tank mana item. It also got some haste on it, which is cute. So now there's a health ability haste item that is quite good. Here's Fimbulwinter. So here's the old Fimbulwinter, and this is assuming you had 750 base mana as your champion. And so here is basically how, and I think I'm also including, no, I'm not I don't think I'm including Manifold Band here. I'm not including Manifold Band as part of this. This can be part of this stuff here. But anyway, yeah, you are a champion. You fully stack Fimbulwinter. You get a bunch of ability haste. You get some health, and you are 84% gold efficient, hoping that further mana matters, and that the mana itself matters, and that everlasting matters. And, you know, yeah, cool. It's not stat efficient, health, and haste. Hope the shield's good. This item doesn't seem very good. Obviously, you could buy it if you really, really, really needed mana. Okay, fine. But like, I don't know. This feels like kind of a weak item. And so now it's actually gold efficient health and ability haste. And look, you're getting mana as a sweetener, and you're getting a further mana hookup as a sweetener, and you're getting everlasting as a sweetener. This item is clearly very good now, right? But it's also requiring you to finish stacking tier in order to turn the item on all the way. Most tier completed items blow this out of the water, to be clear. Like, if you actually look at what Mirror Mana gives you and all these other items, you can say, no, we're not paying for the mana at all, and these items are well above 100%. So yes, this item is 100% with upside of mana and further mana synergy and a shield. Yep, absolutely. I think that's the appropriate tuning of this item, and if it needs to be 2,600 gold or something else, that's fine. Want to point out, again, there's a flat 150 base health increase. Doing the math, it lines up pretty much perfectly. Keep in mind the bonus mana ratio has doubled, so the synergy with Frozen Heart, the synergy with Roa, the synergy with Mana Flow Band, all those go up as well, and they're all twice as good as before. This puts the gold efficiency of bonus mana into stat conversion squarely between Manamune, which is aggressively strong, and Ceres, which is honestly quite weak, and puts it in a middle ground where it's like pretty good and worth considering. Okay, moving on to wanting to give tanks a little bit of ability haste. This is not related to exactly health item stacking, making health items good, but instead being like, we intentionally took a lot of ability haste out of the game in 14.1. I think that was good. We kept it on fighters. That was intentional. We wanted fighters to have a good amount of ability haste. They are the class that is meant to get ability haste commonly as a secondary stat. The like second tier down is probably assassins and mages and tanks, all kind of tied as getting some. It's there, it's around. You're going to get some in like just kind of your default builds, right? All the last chapter builders automatically get 25. That's going to happen here. And we thought that so the goal of the designer who did the tank changes was that, yes, a part of being a tank is repeatability, but his sort of suggestion was that the repeatability was around living long enough to get a second, third, fourth rotation out, which I think is totally valid. And to be clear, I'm not trying to in any way put tank haste anywhere close to fighter haste. But the point here is to say that let's give them a little. Because, of course, back in the mythic world, you would have things like Sunfire Aegis and whatnot, and you had these mythics, and it was like every tank always started with 15 haste, and then they would get a bunch more afterwards, and a lot of their items gave them 5 haste per slot, whatever, and just there was a lot of haste in the game. And again, we took it down, and that was a good thing. That was wise. That was correct. But wanted to give them a little bit here because some haste as a, like tertiary stat that is around a little bit was something we wanted to do here. We intentionally didn't put it on any counter items. We just wanted to give like globally a little bit more haste to tanks. And so we chose the Sunfire line as a pretty obvious line here. Now, Bomby Cinder, I think, is pretty much strictly buffed. 5 haste and 100 gold for 100 HP is a positive trade. Also, being a 900 gold combined cost means that you can get it on first recall as a jungler. That is a pretty big deal as well. So a lot of tank junglers can feel like the feel of being a tank jungler and getting Bomby Cinder first back is going to feel really, really good. And that's just going to be a positive overall for the class, I think. Hollow Radiance is getting a full 150 health for 10 haste. In my mind, this is gold efficiency neutral. We'll see if other players agree, but keep in mind that since we've buffed the value of health items, having less health here, but keeping the amount of armor and MR the same, and then saying, now go buy a Warmog or something else, which, by the way, multiplies into the Immolate passive and says, well, bonus health is going to make this passive better, is going to be a nice kind of natural synergy. Sun for Aegis, same thing, right? Minus 150 plus 10 haste. Okay, great. Randwin's Omen, on another sort of line here. This was just being that, hey, one thing actually happening in this patch, and it wasn't really a concerted effort in any individual case, like, sorry, in an overarching case here, but it ended up being really true. There was a lot less targeted damage and durability in this patch. So you'll see later on with some other item changes, with some rune changes, with a bunch of other stuff, the amount of targeted champion hate is way down in this patch. And so one of them is Randwin's Omen. Randwin's Omen essentially was double dipping auto attacker hate. It both had less damage per auto and it had less crit damage when you receive a crit. Additionally, so I thought that was like a little too hatey. I didn't really like it, right? The other thing was that it was often an obvious suggestion to build Frozen Heart and Randwin's Omen together because, well, of course you should, right? What are these items doing? Well, they are the anti-auto attack tank items. Oh, sorry, you're wasting 200 something gold off Randwin's Omen because, of course, you can't stack Frozen Heart and Randwin's Omen. They both have the rock solid passive. Ha, you dum-dum. And like, items that are like pretty clearly meant to both serve a job together, not working together was like, this is clearly incorrect. We shouldn't do this. And I would rather, instead of making them unique and like you literally can't build Randwin's Frozen Heart, I was like, no, let's just make Randwin's Omen good on its own. So the intended power level of Randwin's is that it is acceptable against one crit user and clearly good against 2. I think the math is clearly the case where you have 75 armor, 350 health. This only costs 2,700 gold. It has a pretty good active that was buffed this patch, and it's still got 30% less damage from crits taken. That is clearly very good when you are tanking 2 crit users, and when you're only tanking 1, well, the active might tip you over the way and buy it outright. I think it is fine if Randwin's is niche, as long as it clearly serves its purpose and is reasonable for that purpose, and I think that will be the case here. And then doing the similar thing of shifting the stats around to make room for raw health purchases to be good. Unending Despair, because we are deleting Brain Go in Genius Hunter from the game. This item is just clearly weak at this point, and so bringing the cooldown down to roughly what the cooldown was at 5 stack in Genius Hunter. Strict buff to an item that almost no one purchased. Also worth noting, by the way, that this is a generic health armor item, right? It's not skewed against auto attackers. It's not skewed against casters. Really, it just has a, hey, you're good at team fighting unique passive, and this is an item, by the way, that has ability haste on it. So if you want your core build to be like Sunfire, Unending Despair, and you've got like a bunch of AoE threat going on, then if you're doing like the team fight tank items, they've all got haste on them, which wasn't really on purpose. Unending Despair happens to have haste on it. I didn't think getting rid of it was important here, but it means that if your build is Sunfire, Unending, whatever, congratulations, this is, you're gonna have a decent amount of haste here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the math real quick on these other items here. So here's Randwin's Omen. I pasted this. Okay, apparently I have it twice. I didn't realize I did this. Yeah, here's Randwin's Omen before and after. I guess we can just delete this line of text here because it doesn't matter. But yeah, you are basically getting 90% gold efficiency in raw health and armor. Of course, you're getting humility and critical resilience. Those are, of course, very, very good. Before, you're getting 80%, but of course, you're getting 200 gold or so from rock solid, which, yeah, if you price it at exactly what Warden's Mail charges you, it charges you 200 gold. That you could debate that's a fair price. I think rock solid is better than 200 gold. So if you're going to use gold efficiency, it went up, but that's kind of fake. Really quick, the item is just like really just like hardcore raw tank stats, and then it has an active that's like okay. And this is actually 75 or 90 second cooldown, whatever. Like it's quite good, of course. Okay, moving on to tank supports. So the initial pitch here for Abyssal Mask was making it a tank support item by making the offensive magic resist shred aura Not rely on your gold income to say, I'm playing Braum, and for whatever reason, I've got 2 mages on my team, I've got a Cassio mid, I've got a Talia jungle. I'm going to go ahead and build MR Shred for my team. Let's do it. We realized pretty quickly this is also going to be a pretty solid item for someone like maybe Singed or Zac or whatever, and give them an offensive MR item. Okay, fine. It's cheaper, it's got less selfish stats, but it's got, in some cases, a better MR Shred that certainly is not predicated on how much health you have. We are afraid of you actually stacking it with other items, and so we made it unique against Void Staff and Crypt Bloom, so you can't stack double percent pen here. I don't think it's going to really matter, but Caspi would probably rather have a Crypt Bloom than Abyssal Mask, but if she wants to switch, I guess she can. Let's talk about the math here on what Abyssal Mask actually does here. So this is Jinx the champion, and this is doing some kind of approximation of, I managed to rush Abyssal Mask at level 5, I don't know how, but I did, and then at some point I've reached full build, I've reached enough bonus health that I've capped out the shred, and so this is my approximation of when I hit these breakpoints. Again, I'm making up the numbers as approximation here. So here's how much the Abyssal Mask used to shred, and here's how much it shreds now if I'm shredding 20% of Jinx's MR. And as a result, here's how much damage I'm dealing to Jinx before and after, and I'm dealing, 5%, 10% less damage to Jinx if she never buys MR. This item is just clearly worse than before. If I was buying health items and I built an Abyssal Mask, and it's worse against Jinx. It's just clearly worse against Jinx. However, if I'm against a reasonably tanky champion, I chose 57 to 168 MR. This is, I have a Null Magic Mantle right now, and then here I'm on like 2-ish MR items. I'm shredding more MR than before. Congratulations, my aura is better, and I'm getting about 2 to 3% more damage here against the targets that, to be clear, if I am Zac or I'm Braum helping in Cassiopeia, probably the champs we're actually hitting, right? No, I want to point one thing out here, which is the radius of this aura is only 600. So pop quiz, what is the radius of Diana R explosion? She pulls you all in and then boom, everything blows up. What is that number, that radius of the explosion of Diana R? It's 475. So this aura is only a bit bigger than Diana R. Now, it's clearly within the range of Diana R. It's going to be in the range of Zac's ability. It's going to be in the range of most of Sin's abilities. It's going to work in the selfish case. And if you're buying this on Braum or Leona or Nautilus, the champion that you are interfacing with, that you are locking down, you have shredded them for sure, but this is going to be outside of a lot of Cassiopeia's core combat pattern. If Cassio runs this, she will often be hitting you with Q and E and not be in range of this aura here. That is going to be relatively common here. We actually chose a relatively small radius to, again, try to pry it away from ranged users. We might be being overly cautious here, to be clear, but that's kind of the idea. Next up in the support tank item is a move on Knight's Vow. So basically it is losing 5 armor and gaining health regen. In pure stat efficiency, this is 200 gold efficient. I don't think it's actually necessarily true, but whatever. The health regen is here because in case your worthy ally can't hit, you're still getting regen back. I think it just makes sense. The damage redirection is mathematically nearly identical. It's less complexity is the entire reason here. And then your damage is now reduced by your armor and MR. It comes to you as physical or magic damage instead of coming to you as true damage. And so you're going to lose less health. This, of course, makes Knight's Vow a much, much stronger item. Of course, if we need to nerf parts of the item down the line, we totally can. There's room on the stats here. There's room on gold efficiency. There's room on the redirect if we really want. We can find numbers that make sense for this item. Ultimately, we think this line makes sense. This line makes sense. This is light compensation. If we want to go below Chain Vest, of course we can. And this is just worth it for tooltip simplicity because it doesn't really matter that you have the extra APM test there going on. Zeke's Convergence is a pretty strong push to say that tank supports are probably allowed to get hybrid resist items. When we went away from Mythics, Mythics kind of had to be generic in their stat profile because often the Mythics were really pattern bound. And that, of course, I'm going to go buy Iceborne Gauntlet. I am Cassante. Of course, I'm going to buy Sunfire or whatever. My champ needs Wave Clear, and if the item only gave you armor, only gave you MR, you're like, well, but I'm a chem tank user. I literally need this item, and I'm against 4 AD. This really sucks. And so there weren't enough items to make stat binding and kit binding work out and have ops every champion. And so all the mythics became pretty generic. It's actually why a lot of the crit marksman mythics were AD, AS, and crit, right? And so in unwinding that and the tank items going back to not being generic and being specifically armor and specifically MR, support tanks are in a special world where they don't get the choice to counter build. They don't get the choice to build more than one item minigames. So they get to have hybrid resists because man, does it feel bad to buy Zeke's because it's good for your champion, or Knight's Vow or Trailblazer or all these other pure armor items because they're good for your champion, and being but they've got double AP. The only item I'm allowed to build is Locket because Abyssal Mask sucks, and I'm clearly not going to rush Spirit Visage or Sunfire Cape. It's The hell do I buy against triple AP as a support tank? I have literally Locket and Merc Treads, and that's it. So, okay, here's a second option here. Here's basically anti-Locket. Here's offensive Locket. It's the same build path as Locket. Kindle Gem, Cloth Armor, No Magic Mantle. Gives you armor and MR, and just basically paying for the stats here. So yeah, minus 10 haste, minus the mana, okay, whatever. But 100 extra health and functionally 20 extra total resists is clearly a way to tank your item. I think this is a very strong buff for Zeke's. Gold efficiency, again, not even pricing the mana in, which maybe you disagree with, but whatever, goes from 88 to 98% gold efficient. If you want to price it as mana, I mean, you could. This is, you know, what, like 350 gold or something worth of mana. Yeah, you could pretend this is a downgrade if you really cared about mana. No one cares about mana, it's fine. Frostbite Tempest, again, kind of the same item here. If you value ability haste the way that I value it, it's, you know, a small upgrade, but like, yeah, I'm getting gold efficient tank stats and ability haste, and then I get an active. It's like pretty normal item pricing as far as I'm concerned. We then move on to mage items. Banshee's Veil is the same item. New item coming out, Blackfire Torch. It is basically Lost Chapter burn item for mages. So this is, now the math here, by the way, to be clear about this, right? This is, so Blackfire Torch is inexpensive. It is Liandry's burn item with 90 AP, 20 haste, got mana. And the burn is flat with an AP ratio, and there's an extra unique passive that says for every champion, epic, and large monster affected, you get bonus ability power. So we can compare it to relatively similar items here. Luden's Companion is basically the same item, but it got a new, got an updated pass, we'll talk about it in a second. But we can compare them across each other, and it's like, yeah, okay. Both these items, without paying for mana, are 100% gold efficient. This is what I said earlier about things like Fimbulwinter. It's like, if you don't pay for the mana, they're still good. And so 100% gold efficient. Mana is kind of free, and then here's the unique passive. This is how modern items are designed in League of Legends. Maybe you think it should be less efficient. That's reasonable if you think so, but you know, let's tune them all to be kind of the same level of efficient. And here's where we are, right? Assuming you care about these stats in a relatively normal way. And so the way this math works out is this Luden's Companion cooldown is about 12 seconds, and this cooldown is 3 seconds. This is what 3 seconds of burn will give you. And notice the numbers are pretty similar, right? And of course, it can do 3.5x on this 12-second cooldown. So if your target is literally alone forever and you fight them and you get exactly, you know, all 6 triggers every time, that's certainly possible to outdamage this burn here, but that's kind of unrealistic. Also, Blackfire gives you % more ability power, so you're never going to beat it. Ultimately, yeah, if you are going to light them on fire forever, it will outdamage Luden's Companion. That will just happen. That will simply be true. You will beat this item because you also get Blackfire over the top. Otherwise, it is really, really similar to Luden's Companion in stat profile, in build ease, all that stuff. Faded Ashes is the new Liandry's / Blackfire Torch build path epic. Not much to say. It's got very, very light flat damage burn. This is 21 damage on every spell you cast. Assuming you're not overcasting them. This will add up some. This matters. I played a game of Malzahar on this, and it helps you like very slightly, a little bit more easily hit a nice breakpoint because your, 4-second long life visions gets 28 extra damage, and maybe it hits your breakpoint. Congratulations, it bounced whatever. Of course, you get more than that when you're actually hitting an enemy champion because you're getting like 6 or 7 seconds of this. You're getting a solid 14 damage on every E on every enemy champion. Kind of nice, right? There's no cooldown here, but again, it's just like a pretty okay item that you pay 100 gold for the unique passive, and it's fine. Luden's Companion getting reshaped to be more about the specific burst versions. The reason old Luden's was the way it was to actually try to cater for dot mages. The reason why it gave you 1 extra shot every 4 seconds or whatever, and that shot itself would be full power, is you could say, well, every 4 seconds, I do 45 plus 4% AP. So if I'm lighting you on fire as Brand and I get a Luden's proc and I get a Luden's proc and I get a Luden's proc, I get 45.4 every 3 or 4 seconds. Hey, it looks pretty similar to this, where is it? 60 plus 6, every 3 seconds, right? Like the numbers aren't that far apart is the funny thing, except that this of course can multi-hit, right? You can dot everybody up with a Crow Storm or whatever else. This obviously matters. That's all very, very relevant, but yeah. Anyway, this has not, it's actually just this little Blanc item. Congratulations. It's going to give you burst of wave clear. It's going to be powerful. 12-second cooldown. It's up sometimes twice per wave. You're going to hit the entire mini wave when you land your spell. If you get multi-hits, congratulations. You get some bonus damage to your champion. I'll be honest, this number might be too high. We got Storm Surge to a point where it's actually a pretty balanced item and it's pretty powerful. A lot of the power is in the stats, because we want these items to be about making your champion better, not the item one-shotting you. If Luden's a little bit too strong, we can slightly lower the repeat damage and whatnot. Or there's going to be mini waves around, it's going to be fine, but like burst damage from procs matters and we should keep them in mind, but we'll see what happens here. Either way, I think this is like a pretty strong version of the item and should feel really good on the little blocks of the world. Leander Storm might just get the new build path. It's getting the new Faded Ashes, nothing else changed. Verdant Berry gets 100 gold cheaper. Okay, great. We move on to fighter items. So fighters get a new item in Overlord's Bloodmail, Tunneler, Gold, and it's basically the old Atlas Impaler passive of bonus health into free attack damage. You also get the old Gore Drinker passive of increased or more attack damage based on how much missing health you have, which is even at 30%. So basically, if Steris Gauge pops, if Maw pops, if you're at the lifeline threshold, congratulations, you're at 10% more AD. Pretty powerful stuff. Here is the gold efficiency Overlord's Bloodmail. This is actually using the item itself to factor in the math. I'm getting 2% of this 500 bonus HP. So if your first item is Overlord Bloodmail, you don't even have like a Dorn's Blade or a Dorn's Shield. Congratulations, you are already at 93% of AD in health. Of course, if you're buying it after you build a Trinity Force or anything else, the numbers go up and up and up and up. I mean, if we add, you know, some more health because you build a Trinity Force, you're 100%. Congratulations, you can get a bunch more here, which is going to be always on to some degree. This item is clearly going to be very, very good. Also, here's the math. This is how much more gold efficient all of your health items are. 26%. This is not terribly far off from what the mana items gave you, or the Dawncore math was, right? Where you're getting around that much more for each of your items and around what Deathcap does. So, you know, this is kind of the math here in terms of what the actual power is. This is going to be a very, very good item. Have fun. It's going to be quite good. Blade of the Rune King, I do not have a math thing for, but Blade of the Rune King is getting reshaped to give more base stats, but less from the unique passive. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad we finally did it. Basically, Blade of the Rune King's death recap says you died to items. You didn't actually, I mean, well, really, all items give you damage. Like, even those items being reshaped from max health damage to flat damage, this item is giving you damage, right? Like, if you win the duel because you bought Blade of the Rune King, it's because Blade of the Rune King gave you damage. But the fun thing is it doesn't look like items dealt the damage in the death recap. That's the thing that players find offensive, which I just find so silly, but it's like continually replicable. This is one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, about having less sharp counters, is we're gonna have like a lot of dot mages go over and build this Blackfire Torch instead of the percent health damage Leandries, by the way. And by the way, in playtesting, Blackfire Torch clearly does less damage per second than Leandries, even when you're only fighting non-tanks. It's just the math is like very clear. This dot is worse, but it's giving you haste, it's giving you mana, it's giving you you know, percent more AP, and so it's gonna give you more kit synergy. But yeah, the math's gonna work out that way. But yeah, so Blade of the Rune King, you know, minus 3% on the current health damage is going to be very, very meaningful. The on-hit slow is going to move to the third attack from the first one. It's going to do quite a lot for, like, Vayne and Uxtion or whatever running you down in side lane or whatever. Like, actually a pretty big deal for the range versus melee, pop-off. That said, though, the melee range mod is going away, unless this is a transcription error. And so, hey, it's going to be better slow, but it is going to require 3 autos, which is, you know, very meaningful here, right? You're not just going to, like, slow them at the very, very start. So plus quite a lot of stats, minus on hit damage. Okay, great. Gonna try to do some napkin math here just because I can. So I usually price on hit damage at 70% of attack damage. And so if I'm hitting, let's say a target who's got 1500 current health, like they started high, they eventually went low. That means I'm getting, you know, 3% of 1500 is what, 45, right? So I'm losing roughly 45 on hit damage. 0.7 of that is I'm losing roughly 30 AD. Vaguely gold efficiency, vaguely 30 AD. Well, here's 15 AD, here's 5 attack speed, here's 2 lifesteal. This is like roughly the same ballpark of gold efficiency. As much as you can use gold efficiency, it's only okay as a measurement, but like, yeah, this item is probably all right, but it's going to make your kit better and be less anti-tank. Less anti-tank. Black Cleaver, though, is going to be more anti-tank. Black Cleaver got nerfed in the durability update of patch 12.10. Bringing it back to 30% pen, I think this is a correct for the item. Basically, it's worth having shot calls of like, yes, I think Black Cleaver should probably be a default fighter item that every fighter just buys and it's just part of their pattern. Every fighter comes in and they've got some move speed and they deal damage. They have some percent pen. They help their team shred through frontline. They are natively pretty good against tanks and, you know, relative to other power levels, less good at killing squishies. That's fine here. Just have fun. Like, even if you don't have execute damage or percent pen in the kit or whatever, like you're Riven or whatever, it's okay. You're actually meant to be good at killing or like okay at fighting Ornn or whatever. Because Cleaver's good. You're meant to buy it. It's meant to help you. It's meant to, you know, get rid of some of the you know, rough points of your kit. Like, just go have fun. That's the point here. Buffing Black Cleaver. One of the projects in the seasonal pod was updating on boots. So this was, we actually took a pass on all these items, ultimately narrowed down the changes by the end. I say we, I didn't have a very direct hand in this, but seasonal designer did this. Basically, Plated steel caps, again, less sharp here. Now, 5 armor versus 4% basic attack reduction. I ran some math. So Talon, as an example of an assassin, deals about 16 to 15% of his damage through auto attacks. So if 15% of his damage does 4% more damage, that's under 1% more damage. So this is a under 1% damage increase for Talon, for Kiana, for every physical assassin I checked, it's under 15% of the damage output. So this, if you're an assassin, is you deal 1% more damage against plated steel caps. Obviously, if you're Jinx or Zeri or Aphelios, it's way more than 1% more damage against them, right? And on the other side, of course, 5 more armor. That's a much bigger deal. This is, 2 to 5% more durability against them, which clearly overshadows the auto attack damage reduction, and it's not close. So if your damage comes from spells, steel caps is a much better item against you. If your damage comes from autos, 5 armor is worse than 4% less damage taken, and you are better if you are Jinx or Aphelios in most cases. Now, I want to be clear, I think this is a good thing. I did not like personally how sharp steel caps was. I understand the old ninja tabby was it gave you dodge chance, and so it was really cute, and it was like, it's armor and anti-auto attackers, and we kept that for a really, really long time. One thing I'm really glad that we are doing this patch is essentially we are getting rid of a lot of the arms race. There's other runes like Cut Down that got moved out that were like specifically anti-tank. Lord Arms for Guards had 2 different lines that were anti-tank. Again, if more dot mages move off Leandries, they're going to be less anti-tank. I'm personally not a big fan of how many arms races we have. Like, I'm fine with like a Randuin's Omen existing where you're like, hey, by the way, they've got 2 crit users. I went and bought Randuin's. Or, they've got a bunch of auto attackers. I went and bought Frozen Heart. This exists for me as a way to go deal with you. But if Frozen Heart was the only way to get ability haste as a tank, okay, well, just every tank is automatically anti-auto attacker. If steel caps are the only way to get armor without side grading an entire legendary into like a Death Dance or something, then you are uniquely anti-auto attacker. And this means that because steel caps are the most built boot in League of Legends the game, that just every frontline tends to have steel caps. And so guess how much damage your Marksman have to deal with everyone having steel caps? 12% more than they're supposed to. And so we have this giant arms race where of course Zeri has to 2-shot Lucian or Janna because she has to fight steel caps Ornn literally every game. And the only thing can get haste is buying Frozen Heart, lowering her damage through both Warden's Mail passive and the attack speed passive. Of course she has to do 1 million damage, right? And it's like, the arms race means that your game-to-game variance in combat pacing gets massive, because the difference between a steel cap Randuin's Omen Frozen Heart tank and somebody's got exhaust and here's Dare for the Steris gauge is so wildly different, you can't really have consistency in your combat pacing, that your AD carries to do so much damage that they 2-shot each other. And so having, I am super down, to be clear, for having cool situational builds. If there was steel caps with 30 armor and steel caps with 15% auto attack damage reduction, and it was pick one, and you could just go option A, go option B, and you only font anti-auto attack steel caps, sometimes instead of literally every game there's 2, the game would feel very, very different, and then you wouldn't have to keep giving damage and damage and damage and damage. And I think the game gets a lot better when, I'm fine with counter items existing. I think they should be situational and opted into when that's relevant here. And so I'm very glad there's less of an arms race, and I'll call it the other ones that are in this patch as well. Again, Blade of the Ring King was that a little bit. The fact that Dot Mages can go not Leanders is going to do that a little bit here. I think these are all really positive things. And so I'm generally happy to see more mechanics go into generic, right? It's like Blackfire Torch gives you % more ability power. Yeah, that's gonna very slightly be anti-tank, because the reason % AP matters is I land on my first Cinder Cube and now I have more AP for my second Cinder Cube, and that matters when I'm fighting Ornn or Riven, but it doesn't matter when I'm fighting Jhin because he dies to QER anyway. And yeah, sure, light that exists, but it's we're not just printing % pen everywhere and presenting % health damage everywhere and printing minus auto attack damage everywhere. It's it existing in subtle ways is fine, because just how things work, as opposed to specifically anti-you. So, fan of this one, I think it's a good change. I might have math on this, yeah. So, here's the math on steel caps before and after. Theoretically, it is gold efficiency up because it's 100 gold more cheap and 100 gold more of armor. So, great, your gold efficiency is up. All boots, by the way, are incredibly overstated. Arguably, move speed is underpriced as a stat. That's fine, but the more I look at it, I don't want to dive into it too much. Yes, this item is better at a base stat profile, and it is worse against auto attackers. Okay, great. Boots mobility is the leader from the game, and in its place are symbiotic souls and synchronized souls. So quest boots, was generally the pitch here for a long time. Every version that I can remember from playtesting was always a Quest Boots version of Mobies. We were trying a version of this even for the 14.1 patch. It wasn't ready. We got it in for this though, and we're pretty happy with it. So it just gives you empowered recall, but it gives you worse than Boots 2 movement until you finish the quest. And now you get baseline Boots 2 movement, you get Boots mobility, and you keep empowered recall. So to be clear, you are spending like 600 gold on empowered recall and like eventually Boots of mobility, right? Like you can rush this, you can rush Swifties, and if you rush Swifties, you get like 65 move speed or something, or 55 move speed. I forget, maybe it's 60. Is it just 60? 60 move speed and some slow resist, which like often doesn't matter, but it can. And on the other side, there's this, which is not as much of a spike when you buy it. I mean, saving 4 seconds on recall matters some, of course, right? 4 seconds of leaving the base sooner is around what at 350 or so move speed. It's 1400 distance, which is a lot, right? It's going to take a very, very long time for empowered recall to get beaten by the baseline movement speed of Swifties, but either way, I think it's a cool boot. We'll see how it pans out. It might be weak, that's fine. There's a ton of tuning levers here, right? This quest can be shorter, this move speed can be 45, this move speed could be 50 for whatever reason, the out of combat could be higher. Like, there's a million things we could do here. I think it's a really, really cool idea for a boot though, and specifically locking the out of combat move speed behind it being late game means you don't have first recall Mobies run top lane and Rune top lane for the Riven players. All right, now we go to probably the other big headline thing that wasn't maybe the Corki rework or sort of global XP changes, which is Marksman item updates. So the core tenets here that I can remember, 1, 25 or 0% crit chance per slot. We're going back to there are 4 items that give you max crit, then you have 1 flex slot that give you anything that you want. And the fun thing about this is I think it does a lot for player psychology, which says, hey, you are allowed to build a non-crit item first, even though you're not probably going to go to 5 items full build. The fact that you're like, but I'm not going to have to sell it when I get to full build, does a lot for players being willing to buy another item, even though it's not true. Like, no bot laners buy Maw of Immortals even when it's correct, because like, but I can't get 100% crit chance. Like, dog, you're not getting 5 items. It doesn't matter. You weren't getting 100 crit anyway, but the fact that the promise exists does a ton for player psychology. Players are way more willing to rush Bloodthirster or Maw or whatever when they're suddenly in a world where they can build Maw and then 4 crit items. It's weird, but it's true. So anyway, 25 crit per item. And that meant, by the way, finding, okay, well then where does Bloodthirster go? Where does this item go? Where does that item go? What are the Marksman non-crit items? Because we're not giving you bonus AD on overcapping your crit. You're not getting Yasuo Yone passive, right? So if you buy a 5th crit item, you're just not getting the stats on it. And so it was identifying, okay, so what are the items that are reasonable at non-crit? We had a consideration of moving LDR there. We had a consideration of moving Quicksilver Sash there, which I think we did actually long term. But it was like, what are the items that we think make sense as the 5th item slot that we're okay building? Guardian Angel is going to be the default, by the way. People are just going to go GA, and that's fine. That's going to be the most likely one by far, and that's reasonable. But it was figuring out the place for each one of these. Okay, so that was like the sub point under 25% crit. The second thing was, broadly speaking, making attack speed a good stat again. Because of lethal tempo, and because of essentially mythics, right? Kraken Slayer and Old Shield Bow and all those items, because they gave AD, AS, and crit, it was like, well, I have AS in my first slot, I have Berserker's Greaves, I probably have lethal tempo, I almost certainly have Legend Alacrity. Why the hell would I ever build an attack speed item anymore? I've already got like 140% before lethal tempo is fully stacked. Why would I do this? And so it was taking a very hard stance of literally no items can have AD, AS, and crit. If you want to go AD, AS, go have fun. And there's plenty of items that do that. That's okay. And Blade Ranking currently does, and it is what it is. But there are no longer any AD, AS, crit items. Okay, go. And then it was, building out the matrix of like who's going to build what items, what's going to make sense here. And so we start with Bloodthirster, which is back to a very old version. It is simply AD, lifesteal. Instead of getting bonus AD on high health, it is Ichor Shield. This is non-crit, big stack of AD, big stack of lifesteal, go overheal. Have fun. Have fun. There you go. It's the old BT. It is a big AD stat stick. The first version we tried was 100 AD. It was too much. So we're at 80. It's still fine. It's still plenty durable. It's still plenty of damage here. We move on to the Collector. The Collector is in a somewhat similar boat here. It's becoming, kind of a more expensive premier item. Of course, it's getting 5 crit chance, it's getting 5 AD, it's losing 1 lethality, and it's worth getting more expensive here. So this item is, of course, clearly very, very good. This item is quite strong, but Collector is basically the item that you already recognize. with, you know, just more chunky damage, but a bit more expensive. Essence Reaver becomes reworked. This item was super, super hard bound to a very, very few champions. Ultimately decided that we didn't want to keep supporting the Sheen Marksman item. You could argue that this, you know, it was fine supporting only Ezreal and Smolder, and that was okay, and Gangplank. That argument exists, and I understand it, but they ultimately decided that no, they would rather have the a more generic. This is the AD haste item. Like, if you are a haste critter, this is the item for you. Yeah, there's no Sheen synergy. Okay, Gangplank and Smolder and Ezreal can go figure out their Trinity Force builds, and they're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. They're going to build an item, to be clear. But it's going to be a large, big ticket AD stat stick, 65 AD, 25 haste, 25 crit. Like, these are really, really good stats. And instead of getting mana on Sheen, you get mana on auto attack. But again, it's being grown up to be a big ticket, large legendary. And a lot of these, like, these legendaries are becoming very large price, very high price, because the attack speed items are becoming very, very cheap. That you're basically paying for cheap attack speed items with high price AD items. Immortal Shield Bow is getting 5 crits, getting 5 AD, but of course losing 12 lifesteal. This is, of course, a pretty meaningful downgrade. Technically, the gold efficiency here is fine. It's also relatively inexpensive. It's only 3,000 gold, but can totally understand. I've seen plenty of comments, people saying this item is kind of bad now. We'll see. This might be true. It's not hard to buff this thing if you want to give it more shielding or more AD or more whatever. This is totally doable. Infinity Edge is getting just strictly buffed. One of the kind of expectations here is that IE is probably going to be a very good first item. I mean, 15 AD and 5 crit for 100 gold is clearly an upgrade. Now, keep in mind, currently, literally no one buys IE first. It is bad as a first item, so these very, very strong buffs make it good as a first item. And also, one thing I want to point out here that's actually very, very meaningful that I think is not being talked about enough is, like, losing old Shiv and old Kraken Slayer, which is all anyone buys first slot, is a very large downgrade. Like, those items are incredibly, incredibly, incredibly good because they're still kind of mythics. They didn't really get changed very much in the 14.1 update. Like, they're kind of still mythics. And so losing, like, an actual mythic item is a very big deal here and is a pretty meaningful amount of power lost. So even though IE is, like, very clearly strictly stronger and a really, really good item, like, people are going to have to figure out builds, and there's going to be differences in power level. Pure Shards goes away. This is something that I ran into when I was doing the 13.10 Marksman update, is that it is really hard to actually want to make Energize good, because generally the point of being a Marksman is that you have good sustained damage. And if you're not a sustained damage dealer, it's coming from your abilities. Coming from just doing one long range, like RFC, Static Shiv, Stormrazor auto, is just like, it's not really on the champion fantasy, and it actually just like makes the gameplay quality really poor. Watching the like Static Shiv RFC Lucian builds from MSI or running them on live, it's like the gameplay quality is actually pretty bad there. And so I know when there was Energizer builds back in like 2018, all those items gave attack speed, and so it was actually bad to stack them because you really wanted attack damage instead. And so it's like, well, how am I going to get all these energized items and also AD? It's not possible. And so the builds were bad, even though like the stacking nature was kind of cute. And so when I updated these items and I made them, more of AD items that function in terms of making them functional, but it's like, yeah, but Energize just is still not a vertical that works. It just like isn't actually good. And so, yeah, we're deleting a lot of Energize from the system. I think it's actually good. I'm actually, to be clear, like really glad we're kind of deleting some of the proc effects from the like AD carry space. I just like, if we can have fewer proc effects, like proc damage, I'm generally pretty happy with that, actually. I think that's a better place. And you can come up with cool stat profiles or other like stat bindings or kit hooks, whatever, that like make the items good. So yeah, Kurtai Shard is gone. No longer do we have an Energized component. Kraken Slayer gets rebuilt into an AD/AS move speed item. No longer does it have crit, so it has free move speed. It has it has move speed. It has more AD. It has more attack speed. It is a bit more expensive, but it's losing crit chance. The on hit damage is getting changed from if you can hit someone 6 or 9 times, just deal more damage based on how low they are. I expect this to be a buff in almost all cases. That's my expectation here. I could be wrong, but that's my expectation here. Lord Dominus Regards is losing Giant Slayer. This is, I believe, what, 20%? I think it's up to 15 or 20% more damage based on how much max health they have. Or max health than you. I don't remember. I think it doesn't matter. Regardless, it is getting 5 armor pen, it's getting 5 crit chance, it's getting 5 AD. So LDR is going to become a little more generic. Percent armor pen is good against everyone because everyone has armor. Even Annie level 18 has 99 armor. It's still pretty effective there. But you don't have extra special tank hate. You no longer have deal bonus damage based on max health. That's a very, very big deal. You're going to sharply counter tanks less often, and so you have the ability to kill frontline is not as predicated on LDR, and because there's less frontline hate, tanks don't have to have as much durability in their items because they don't have to run into a double unique passive killing them. Again, I'm a really big fan of having less like class hate in the game, essentially. Mercurial Scimitar is being called out as one of the non-crit items, so it is getting more expensive. It is getting 10 lifesteal, losing crit chance. This is almost certainly demotion. This is almost certainly weaker. 10 lifesteal for 20 crit and 300 gold is almost certainly nerfed to this item. That's just going to be the case. It's just going to be true. Scimitar will be a niche item. That said, by not requiring you to have crit chance, it's opened up to other classes. Okay, cool. Not much to say here except that, like, this, yeah, is a nerf to an item that's already kind of niche. But to be clear, this item is meant to be niche. QSS is not meant to be an item that you're going to buy every game. What a reminder, just gets 5 free crit chance. Congratulations. Navori Flicker Blade is a reworked version of Navori Quick Blades. It is no longer going to be this sort of capstone-y caster type item. We already have Essence Reaver as high AD, high haste crit chance item, and so Flicker Blades is meant to be the AS item that gives you cooldown refund. And so the ability haste and AD are gone. I believe this is not in the patch notes here, but the percent more spell damage is gone as well. So it is basically an understated Phantom Dancer that has cooldown refund on hit. Again, it's going to be significantly more inexpensive here as well, 700 gold cheaper for a huge stat downgrade. But Flicker Blades is now your basically Phantom Dancer, RFC, Hurricane sized item. There's like 4 of them, these high AS crit items, and this one gives you cooldown refund. Noon Quiver is getting moved over to be a Longsword Cloak item. So it's losing all its special passes, whatnot. It's just here you go, have some stats, some crit chance. Not much to say here. It's AD and crit. It's just a generic component now. It's no longer a mythic component. Phantom Dancer is being shrunk down to 2600 gold. It is getting more move speed. It is getting more crit chance. It is losing the bonus AD. It is getting all the attack speed. It's getting the by the way, instead of getting the attack speed on all the passives, the passive just says you are ghosted. That's it. No special text. It is a giant stat stick of AS, move speed, and the normal amount of crit chance. It is inexpensive. It is the best AS stat stick in the game. Rapid Fire Cannon goes back to the old version almost exactly. 25 crit chance, 35 attack speed. No more AD. Again, becomes cheaper. I tried mid-sized RFC. It certainly worked. This had a user base, but going back to saying no, it's the attack item. Okay, fine. So Scout's Slingshot is basically the new Kirchai shot. Essentially, it is attack speed and occasional damage on proc. Rune's Hurricane is going back to a smaller version here as well, getting rid of the on-hit damage and giving it, so basically cheaper item, more crit, more AS, bolts are better, but no on-hit damage. So Rune's Hurricane is going to be slightly less attractive for on-hit users. I mean, it being cheaper is nice, but that doesn't pay for 30 on-hit damage. They don't care about the attack speed the crit chance that much. They don't care about the on-hit damage that much. It does matter, right? Keep in mind, like every like Blade of the Ruin King, Rage Blade Kog'Maw still has like 160 base AD, and that AD can crit and that damage can matter, right? Like the bolt throughput can matter. So it's going to be less attractive because I think your generic on-hit champion is going to be like, but why do I want bolt AD conversion? Why do I want crit chance? But like it's still good. It still matters, right? Like the math, still helps you deal more damage. So, but it's primarily going to be much, much, much better for an auto attacker, right? If you're playing Jinx or Felix or whatever, you're like, yeah, that's my hit damage, whatever. I'm getting way better bolts, I'm getting more crit chance, like clearly worth it for me. So this is going to be a really, really nice item on crit users. Static Shiv, much like Kraken Slayer, is becoming an AD/AS item, and so no crit, more attack speed. It's got its flat attack damage here, and now the Electro Spark is going to be not on Energized Cadence, but when you kill a minion with a very short cooldown, you'll get this 2 to 3 times a wave, as long as you can, last hit minions, okay? And then the really exciting thing is, pretty solid bounce range, very, very good bounce cap, essentially. Just as you get takedowns, do a bunch of stuff, and this should pretty reliably trigger several times a fight if you're doing pretty well, and yeah, deals triple damage, so 270 magic damage to pretty much the entire enemy team. Will be an interesting thing to how this ends up panning out. I think this will be kind of cool. We'll see if there are users. There's only so many AD/AS sort of users who are out there, but I think it's a really cool idea for an item, and so we'll see if it works out. Stormrazor is gone. Again, we haven't really been happy with just giving AD carries upfront proc damage, so that's going away. Terminus, very slight build path change. 5 AS for I have 5 AD. Okay, whatever. We'll take Cyclosaur, just getting a build path change. New item coming in, Unital Wild Arrows. So this is kind of sort of maybe slightly the AD crit like capstone, sort of. It's not really. I don't really want you to think of it that way, but this is a good stack of AD. It's a good stack of crit chance. It's, normal expensive. The special thing is that your critical strikes deal 35% total AD over 2 seconds. This stacks. This stacks. It also works with things like Hurricane. It also works with things like Belveth E. So also this would work with, if for whatever reason you wanted to buy this alongside a Sundered Sky, you would crit them and you'd get this thing. Congratulations. It is, by the way, critical strike attacks. Things that count as critical strikes don't matter. Like this is, I don't know, the cosmetic critical strike of like Rek'Sai E when it's full fury. That's not what this is. So yeah, this is basically just high AD, high crit chance, and just 35% more AD kind of, and especially has a synergy with Hurricane, which is kind of cute. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, pretty solid, just high AD. If you don't want the Essence Reaver shape of the item, you have this instead. So you get this bleed instead of like the ability haste and mana, right? And then Zephyr. I don't think this item is going to be very strong, and the point is not to be very strong, but the point is to say, hey, congratulations, you went full build, and instead of selling your boots for a Phantom Dancer, you can upgrade this and have about as much stats as if you had a Phantom Dancer instead. 45 move speed, of course, very good. 45% AS, pretty good for a slot. And yeah, you have a on-hit gain up to 15% more move speed, which means that it's clearly going to be better at kiting than something like a Phantom Dancer or whatever else. So just good enough to still be worth keeping. And just kind of feel cool about spending 2,000 gold on 10 attack speed and a bad unique passive. Again, this is not gold efficient. You are not meant to build Zephyr until you are full build otherwise, but I think it's just like a nice way to say you've capped your build, congratulations. Like, this thing have like a gold border and like throw confetti when you buy it. Like, congratulations, you did it. You finished your build. And that's like the point of the item, basically. Otherwise, it's just some component upgrades or updates. So Hearthbound Axe is now double longsword and a dagger, plus 5 AD, minus 5 AS. Okay, whatever. Recurve Bow, physical damage on hit. It's got Slingshot, basically old Kerchice Shard, but instead of being the energized cadence, which is about every 7 seconds, it's I forget what the cooldown is. I want to say it's like 30 or 40 seconds here. So it's going to be a much, much lower cadence here. Zeal gets 5 free crit chance, better item. Dagger gets less gold efficient, so now suddenly we can change all our gold efficiency calculations for AD carry items. And now that we've gone through the entire roster, let's do the math. Flashbang warning. Wow. Okay, so Bloodthirster, and this, by the way, is not before and after. This is just, hey, roughly how good are the items now that we are in a new world? Bloodthirster gives you gold efficient attack damage and lifesteal, and gives you this nice shield that, like, hey, if we say it's worth like 250 health, which is like around level 10 or something, hey, that's pretty good. This is a solid, like, 130% gold efficient item. Seems pretty good. Like, this is fine. It gives you attack damage, lifesteal, and health in all relatively equal measures, and okay, great. The Collector, still a quite good item. There's still unique passive here, Death and Taxes. Okay, that actually does matter, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it gives you a good amount of each of these stats. Essence Reaver, new version, is really, really good. Now, Mana Restore is, again, we don't typically charge you very much for mana. If we account for the fact this item has bonus AD by itself, it's automatically 21.5 mana on hit, and another 10% of every bonus AD you get from there. Functionally infinite mana, 130% gold efficient. Yeah, it's a lot. It is hard to want crit chance and haste at the same time, though, so because this item functionally has anti-synergy, it's not quite as good as you might think, though still, obviously, pretty good stuff. Immortal Shield Bow, yeah, you are getting gold efficient AD and crit chance. When you look over here, this item also gives you gold efficient AD and crit chance. The question is, do you want 25 ability haste and mana restore, or do you want a shield? Your call, of course, but you might choose one or the other. Regardless, this item is technically, statted okay if you, again, want AD, crit, and some shielding. If you look at Bloodthirster, it's not that far off on gold efficiency. Not really. It's also, cheaper, which kind of helps. And if you really want to keep up with crit, because crit is a really core stat for you, I can see it being there. Is it going to be niche? Probably. Infinity Edge, I'm mathing out the crit damage, by the way, as the incremental value this provides at first slot. So if you buy IE at first slot and you slam it right away, the functional value of the item is 130%, which is no different from ER, assuming you actually care about ability haste. No, that's, maybe fake, right? But it's not technically that extreme. This is actually relatively normal pricing. And of course, as you go farther down the line, yeah, this crit damage is, of course, going to be valuable, but basically the way to do the math is okay, by having this item, having 25 crit chance, and then getting 50 crit damage, this gives me X% more damage, right? Some number X% more damage. If I was to get crit chance instead, that is worth about 700 gold of crit chance of X% more damage. Now, that X% more damage gets larger the more crit chance I have, and so the functional gold efficiency of this item goes up by slot. If you buy it slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, it's more than 130% gold efficient. So, yes, the item is clearly good. You should clearly buy it every game. That is what's going on here. Kraken Slayer is at gold efficiency, AD, AS, and move speed. Very, very good. If we take, let's say this does, 200 divided by 3 times AD times 0.7, we get roughly, this much gold efficiency in on-hit damage, right? We get, 70 on-hit damage, you know, the conversion for on hit damage. And yeah, you know, if you were to get 70 on hit damage, that would be worth about this much gold. I believe that's the math here, right? Because that would be about 50 AD, and hey, that's where we are. So yeah, this item is good, right? Like, you are getting really, really, really good rates on AD, AS, move speed, and on hit chance, on hit damage. Like, this is a very good item. It doesn't work with Hurricane, but it works with Rageblade. Yeah, Kraken's Blade looks kind of nice. LDR, depending on how you want to price various stats, it is, you know, nearly gold efficient on attack damage and crit chance. Of course, Armor Pen is a stat that is only given in one location. Self-referencing gold efficiency is really, really fake. You shouldn't do it. It's kind of silly to do so. So, hey, you are spending 500 gold for Summon of Armor Pen, which is probably very, 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 very good. This can give you, you know, 30% more damage outright, which is clearly amazing and a very good item here. Mercurial Scimitar is, yeah, you're paying quite a lot for Quicksilver. Okay, fine, right? Here's your attack damage, here's your lifesteal, here's your magic resist. You are paying a lot for Quicksilver. That is unsurprising. Again, this item is not meant to be very, very good. It certainly isn't. Navori Flicker Blade, yeah, you're actually paying quite a lot for Transcend. I'm pretty sure I got the math right here, right, in terms of, you know, this is how much move speed and attack speed and crit chance gives you. So you really, really, really want this. Forces is a very strong line to give you this cooldown reduction, but you are paying a lot to get this. That's the important thing to kind of point out here, is that this is very, very, you have to really care to buy this instead of Phantom Dancer, because Phantom Dancer is 120%, right? It's all the same stats, but just more of them. It's 5% more move speed, 20% more attack speed. And so do you want 20 AS and 5 move speed, or do you want to replace your cooldowns? We'll see, right? This is obviously a very, very powerful thing, but keep in mind that because this item itself doesn't give ability haste, the actual per hit cooldown reduction of Transcendence is larger than before, because before, and also it's self-centered because it gives you the attack speed. And so this item, right, prints you a lot of cooldown refund, and again, is already kind of filling the slot for something like Tristana, where she doesn't actually need that much more AS, but she really wants her Q energy to come back up. We then go to Rapid Fire Cannon. The next of the Zeal items. Again, you are paying for Sharpshooter. It's always been the case here. This item has always been good when you pay several hundred gold for Sharpshooter. It's been true with the old AS version. It's been true with the AD version that we had yesterday. It's just still true. But it's Hurricane, you are paying basically at rate. You're going to see, you know, compared to Phantom Dancer, it's a little bit less AS, a little bit less move speed, but Wind's Fury is obviously very, very good. I expect Wind's Fury to be kind of the default option in most Marksmen. It gives you really, really fast wave clear. It gives you some teamfight output. I mean, Rune's IE is going to be a really sick build. I don't know if you can really be able to rush IE, but if you can find your lifesteal somewhere else. It's going to feel really good. Static Shiv is not gold efficient in terms of AD and AS. You are paying for the passive. This item might certainly be weak. It's obviously possible here. It's not hard to buff if it is. You know, I think these effects do matter some, but yeah, you are not quite getting at rate AD and AS. Terminus stats moved around, okay, whatever. Again, pricing in the on-hit damage, but again, this item can give you 30% armor and magic pen. It can give you 18 to 20 armor and MR. That's obviously quite a lot. If we say, you know, it gives you 10 armor plus, you know, 10 MR, that's, you know, 400 gold or so of resists, right? And then of course there's still a pen on top. So, you know, this item is not bad. I mean, people buy it. They buy it. It's quite good. And then here's Zephyr. Obviously, this thing is quite silly. It's not efficient. It's not meant to be. It's just there to be special. Congratulations. It's Zephyr. Go feel good about yourself. Okay, we move on to Summoner Spells. I did not mention this in the patch preview from last week, but this was another thing that LivePod took on. The pitch was to... the ticket name essentially, and then I kind of took it and ran with it, was to rebalance Ghost versus Heal in bot lane. And I basically took it and said, okay, well, what I'm going to do is, like, if you're optimizing and your support is an Enchanter, they're going to literally always run heal, and there's no way around this. Now, if your support is a, you know, a tank, they're playing Leona or Rel or whatever, okay, fine, right? You might go heal instead of Ignite. That's reasonable. I can see that. Or heal instead of a Ghost, whatever. And so, you know, retuning some stuff that, you know, heal and Ghost were balanced is reasonable. But, like, in the general case, you know, every time you're with an Enchanter, you're clearly not running heal, they get to, you know, get % more healing. That's just never going to happen, right? So I took a look at the current summoners in League of Legends, and what it came down to is, I thought there were a couple of failings. One is, because summoners are a long cooldown system, inherently this is a system that is meant to allow you to play around cooldown differences. And I thought in a lot of cases, there were summoner spells that only had 30 seconds separating them, which meant the window wasn't long enough to be worth it, right? Flash at 5 minutes says it's clearly a long enough cooldown that you can play around Flash and you time it and you go and do stuff about that. Heal at 4 minutes is probably long enough for that to be the case as well. And the rest kind of, to me, sort of failed that. They were just kind of always up, especially if we got other forms of summoner cooldown with things like cooldown boots and Cosmic Insight. And maybe long-term, cooldown boots aren't meant to do that, and Cosmic Insight's not meant to do that, or it's meant to be like a more expensive premier stat on some class or something. I'm not sure, but I just didn't think it was hitting the mark in terms of actually having like readable cooldown windows that you could actually abuse. And so not only was like, okay, well, we should just nerf Ghost, but we should also retime our summoner spell cooldowns to like have more delineation, to have more room to say, oh, I've got a summoner advantage, let's use them. And so I basically looked at the other summoners, which was Cleanse, Exhaust, and then as well as, of course, Ghost that we're nerfing, and was like, well, we don't actually need to nerf these. These runes are appropriately powerful. Ghost can just be nerfed, but and then also realized that like Barrier is kind of bad. So Ghost is just being nerfed. Now, I want to be clear, this means that Ghost is probably nearly non-viable in most mid laners. Like, at the end of the day, every summoner is going to have an optimal user, right? Like, it turns out Cleanse is really good on ranged champions because they want to shrug off individual CCs because they're usually not in the thick of things. And we could make the Cleanse, like, tenacity better, and in fact we did, but it could be really, really hard for, like, that to be a really strong effect on a lot of melee champions. It's just going to be hard. Even though they like tenacity, they can buy it in items, and they want to be, you know, in threat range more often than a 4-minute or 3.5-minute cooldown can provide. So that's kind of always going to be a, like, backline summoner spell without, like, a significant reshape. Ghost, in kind of a similar vein, is very much for your long combat pattern champions who really care about distance differences. And so this is like Ghost lasting the entirety of Cassante Ultimate. This is Ghost with Olaf. This is Ghost with most Marksman. And ultimately, it just has to be balanced around its best users. And Ghost is pretty game warping and overbearing on Olaf and Ashe and everyone else here. And so it is a very strong nerf. Now, the nice thing is most ranged top laners use Ghost. So the nice thing for top laners who hate playing against things like Vayne, goodbye Ghost, right? It's a much bigger spell with a 5-second lower duration, 30-second longer cooldown, a meaningful nerf to Ghost here. Yeah, this spell is just very overpowered. Cleanse, again, just wanted to hit the 4-minute cooldown. The litmus test here was Cleanse can shut down a gameplay pattern, right? It can be like, oh, you wanted to use Ashe ulti or Varus ulti or this other long cooldown spell? Nah, it did nothing here. And so that to me made sense that it should be a 4-minute long cooldown as a spell. But I didn't think it was like overpowered and needed to be weaker, so I gave it a compensation buff. There's not a lot of levers here. There's cooldown and there's tenacity duration and tenacity value. That's it. Those are the only things we have. And one of them we're already changing, so we have only the other two. And we could have said the tenacity was 4 seconds long because it was 5 seconds long. I chose tenacity value, whatever. Exhaust, similar boat here, where it's combat warping. It can say no to Zed, it can say no to Kennen, it can say no to a lot of champions. It also lets you pin someone down to kill them. And so I decided that Exhaust should be less about hating on you and turning off your kit. It should be less about living, because Barrier can do that. Barrier is only about living, so Exhaust shouldn't eat the lunch. And so Exhaust can be, no, here's a slow, I'm going to slow you down. We're going to go and run you down afterwards. And so played up the slow as a way of keeping up with the cooldown nerf. And then Barrier just sucks, right? Barrier is actually a weak spell. No one really runs it except for Warwick top. And so it's buffing both the duration and shield. Summoners are not meant to be... I mean, they can be skill expressive, right? Like, Flash is very clearly skill expressive, but, like, Flash is skill expressive, but not hard to use, right? There's no hoops to jump through. When you press Flash, Flash happens. When you press Heal, Heal happens. When you press Ignite, Ignite happens. And you can use it wrong, which, like, very clearly can happen, but, like, it is usable. Like, hopefully you kind of understand the delineation here between like being usable and being skill expressive, right? Because those aren't mutually exclusive. Barrier, I think, is on the edge of just not being usable. And so the very first buff we put in was duration from 2 to 2.5 seconds. And the feedback was like, oh, wow, this is more impactful than I thought it was. This is actually really meaningful. This spell actually feels good to use finally. And then through further playtesting, the feedback was that it wasn't quite strong enough. And so buffed the shield value a fair bit up to about 15% more shielding. And then some very minor under stuff under the hood stuff for heal, just buffing the range a little bit because this ends up having the range match KLW. And longer term, I actually want to change the usability to work like KLW, where if I press W on you, I walk in a range. If I press W anywhere, it just heals me and closest guide to my cursor. That requires, though, building a wrapper spell in front of heal and hooking that up as what heal the summoner spell is, and then having that cast a different spell based on targeting parameters, which is how KL does it. That's a pretty scary thing to put in out of nowhere, so we'd have to have enough time for testing and whatnot, but long term, the usability, I think, is worth it on heal. But that's not here, of course. Okay, flashbang warning. Okay, so The numbers on barrier versus before and after is, again, about 15% more shielding, and again, a 25% longer duration. This is a very, very big deal. Barrier from testing has looked to be actually a pretty good summoner spell, and we'll probably see some real play now. I actually expect a lot of AD heroes to start playing barrier. The nice thing about running barrier instead of like Overheal or double stacking Shield Bow and Bloodthirster is it's very apparent that barrier exists, and is the kind of system I think players are actually really good at interfacing with. And so I expect to see quite a few barrier ADCs when like, oh, there's a Zed or a Talon, or a Kiana or something, and I'm going to run barrier and it's going to be actually useful here, is what's going to happen. I think it's going to be pretty valuable, and you've still got things like Bloodthirster and Shield Bow that are probably some degree of valuable. And then secondarily, here is the comparison against heal. I did not intentionally choose 1.5x the shield value. I just buffed it until the numbers felt appropriate. It happens to be 1.5x of heal. Of course, heal hits twice as many people, but also has a longer cooldown. Barrier is, of course, going to just give you more health per second, and it's not close, but yeah, it's a better summoner spell overall. We then have another really cool thing here. I'm a really big fan of all these changes. We are having a big set of updates to runes. Some section of game health, some sections are deleting things we don't need anymore that we kept bad. So Predator, again, we've never been happy with a version of Predator that is good, much like Anathemas, much like Stormrazor, all these things. So goodbye. Predator is gone, has been removed from the game, back to only 3 runes up in that top shelf in the red tree. Halo Blades now has a ranged mod for the Ashe and Varus supports out there that did a lot for pro play. Yeah, this should have probably happened a while ago, but a good change all the same to make this a little less overbearing. Keep in mind that also ranged champions have more access to Halo Blades because they're ranged and they're more easily able to get auto attack range. So just less strong fighting here. Genius Hunter, incredibly low pick rate. Even the like, oh man, look at this build. It's the Unending Despair shield spam Volibear. It's like a quarter of Volibears when running Genius Hunter, and that's its most popular user. Like this item, this rune doesn't exist. I'm sorry. It's adding bloat to the rune system. Goodbye. Sudden Impact is getting a shape. A sub goal is getting rid of lethality and management in the rune system. Should keep it in a pretty similar place for input and output while keeping it basically less as a cape multiplier. I think it's very interesting. Yeah, the idea of getting rid of, again, systemic anti-targeting, right? What does lethality and flat management do? It's good against squishies. Yes, true damage happens to be better against tanks, but like the degree to which true damage is better against tanks compared to lethality is better against squishies is less. Essentially, yes, this could have been adaptive damage. Sure, that could have been an absolute possibility. Okay, whatever. Regardless, I think this is like correct, and again, like slightly less class hate. I think just makes League a slightly better game. Relentless Hunter actually is a little bit overpowered. Yeah, it's kind of a support only and jungle only rune, but it is pretty OP on those who use it. This will become a fairly niche rune. That's okay. It's fine. This thing is just kind of OP. I mentioned earlier, wanting to make attack speed actually a premier good stat. So goodbye lethal tempo. Crit Marksman, find a new rune to run. This is, of course, a very, very big deal. And that is going to be press the attack. The proc damage is going to be the same at 40 to 180. But now, instead of making that target take 8% damage from everyone, it's just you just deal 8% more damage. So you can, by the way, re-trigger PTA. And get it a second or a third time in a long fight, which I believe is also true for the current PTA, but whatever. But the point is that you get your 3 attacks off, and now you just deal 8% more damage globally. So if you're a Hurricane ADC, congratulations, they all take 8% more damage. If you have some big AoE spell that does really good stuff, bam, you do 8% more damage on all that stuff. Of course, we'll retune anything as needed. If there's any marksmen who don't have rune replacements and they suck with PTA, then we can change things around, right? All these things are possible. But PTA is the here you go, primary sustained damage. Marksman rune, go have fun, go play this. Overheal is gone. Basically, again, never really got used if it wasn't overpowered. Replaced with Absorb Life. Get some health on minion kill. It's just basic sustain. If you don't need Presence of Mind, if you don't want Triumph, here's lane sustain. Okay, great. Legend Tenacity is gone. We are getting rid of Tenacity in the runes pretty much entirely. We got rid of Unflinching a while ago. We nerfed Tenacity a year ago. There are good Tenacity items in the game. Merc Treads is untouched. Wit's End now has Tenacity. Sterak's Gauge has Tenacity as of last midseason. No, it's actually 14.1 I think actually added it. So like there are ways to get Tenacity as a melee champion who needs to shrug off CC. That those tools exist. But now they are very much like, okay, well you can buy Merc Treads. That gives you 30 or 35. Okay, fine. Wit's End and Sterak's Gauge are intentionally targeted for certain classes of champions, right? Melee skirmishers and melee juggernauts, or fighters in general, can always buy them, right? Like I can see an Aurelia build both, that's fine. But saying, okay, yes, Tenacity is a like tertiary stat for fighters. It is not a stat for anyone else. We want CC to be reliable and functional and do its thing. I think this is good for the game. I think it is appropriate to do. I am glad we have tenacity in more items now. These came because we knew we wanted to get tenacity out of runes and put it here instead and give it to the class that deserves tenacity. Fighters get more haste. They get health in their damage items. They get tenacity in their items. These are the tools that we give fighters to allow them to be functional and melee in League of Legends in a game that is based a lot on 5-on-5s. These are all things that we explicitly give this class. Here's Black Cleaver, overpowered. You get percent pen. This is a core functionality you get because being melee is hard. And giving it to these classes of champions, I think, is very, very valuable and very good. It is being replaced by Legend Haste, which gives you flat ability haste per stack. Specifically basic ability haste, so it will not affect your ultimate. I mentioned, again, getting rid of some class hate. Cut down is getting changed from deal more damage to cause more health than you to just deal more damage to champions who are healthy until they get low. Now, I'm pretty sure Cut down will become the generically best rune in this row. I'm pretty confident in that. In general, you fight high health champs more than low health champions. Low health champions tend to run away. Now, I think if you're playing like Karthus or something, yeah, unless you're doing ulti for like first strike spam, which probably is not the right way to play Karthus, but I mean, you can if you want. Yeah, Cut down is maybe not something you're going to build then otherwise. If you are the type of champion who actually gets the end of kills, you're coming in second as Samira or something or whatnot, then sure, yeah, I can see Cut down being the right kind of place for you. But if you're playing a poke champion, clearly Cut down is optimal for you. I would say in most cases, Cut down is really, really good for you. Fleet Footwork, a little bit less sustained, a little bit more move speed, just kind of a small reshape here, not much to say. Font of Life, really, really smart reshape here. I like this change a lot. It's getting changed because, so in general, the rule of thumb in my mind is minor runes should not have many patterns attached to them. Now, it's fine if there's like kit binding, right? Like, hey, here's sudden impact that only works after dashing or leaving stealth. Yeah, some champs can't do this. Okay, Aphelios is not going to use sudden impact. Okay, that's fine. That's not a problem. It's okay, I have to jump through a hoop, and someone else will jump through a different hoop, and then my rune does something is too much for a rune. So Font of Life being like, you apply CC, gain reward, we're out. I think that is great. That is, I think, completely correct. I think that is the right choice. Absolutely about it. Good option here. As for the numbers, we figure them out long term. That's okay. But I think just like a upgrade in terms of a better rune. It is not scaling off gold. It's just here you go. If you get levels, Font of Life is good. This also makes the rune usable by yourself, by the way, right? Slowing an enemy champion heals you and a nearby ally. So if you want to play Font of Life in top lane as Ornn and you just like land Q on somebody, congratulations. Font of Life triggers. You healed yourself some. Is it probably your optimal rune? Probably not, but it's actually now usable in a solo lane or in the jungle or whatever, which is like, cool, great, neat. Then we go on to inspiration runes. Biggest thing is things have been moved around, so Hex Flash, Free Boots, and the new Cashback rune are in top row. Triple Tonic and Timework Tonic and Biscuits are all now together in the second row, and Cosmic Insight, Approach Velocity, and the new rune Jack of All Trades are now in the bottom. Fusion Market is gone. This rune was incredibly strong, and no one wanted to run it because going into debt sucks. So it's getting replaced by a really, really clever redesign, and it's called Cashback. You get 6% of your gold back when you finish a legendary item. This means this cannot finish your first item. It can't finish your last chapter, can't finish your Luden's Tempest, but then it gives you 180 gold when you finish that Luden's or whatever, which can be a pretty big deal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Dematerializer, also, again, pretty underappreciated and is going away. Goodbye to Demat, a rune that no one really wanted to get, even though it was very, very strong, and getting replaced functionally, though in a different row, by Jack of All Trades, which is a really, really cool thing. For each unique stat, you get 1 ability haste, and then if you can get to 5 stacks or 10 stacks, you get 10 or 25. This is 10 plus 15 is 25, not 10 plus 25 is 35. Adaptive Force. And to be clear, Doran's Blade is 3 stats. Zerk Greaves is the next 2. Items that literally every ADC buys gets you automatically 5 haste and 10 and 6 AD. Again, the next 5 is hard. There's crit chance, there's percent armor pen, there's ability haste, there's MR, I guess, if you want, and then percent move speed should be a unique stat there as well. And so you can just barely through like a Flicker Blades, IE, Phantom Dancer sort of build, like crit damage should be a stat as well. So like I'm pretty sure like the Flicker Blades IE PD build can like get you there and whatnot, but like it starts to get like a little tight and you have to go kind of a little bit deeper in to get there. For mages, it's kind of hard, right? Health, AP, flat pen, move speed, mana, cool, that's easy, right? You're gonna get that every time. Okay, percent pen, right? And it's okay. And you're going to run out of options, right? So it can be a little bit tough. The nice thing if you're like a Trinity Force user, here's AD, haste, AS, health, getting armor and MR, getting, you know, all these stats. So you can get the 10 stacks, but yeah, it's going to really depend on your champion. It's going to depend on your build. And I think it's going to be a very strong rune, to be clear. I think it's actually going to be a really default pick in a lot of champions, because this is good, right? This is, what, like 18 attack damage or something? 15 attack damage, something over there, and 10 haste, which is like pretty good if you like haste at all. You're probably getting haste to get one of these 10 stats, to be clear, but like you get a little bit more and you're happy. And this is, again, to be clear, this is from runes, or sorry, from items, not from runes. Like you can't run Transcendence and get some of this, right? Time Warp Tonic no longer gives bonus move speed. It gives you more upfront healing and no longer reduces the healing over time. So Time Warp Tonic says your potions are better. It's now in the same row as Biscuits, so it can only affect health potion, refillable potion. Keep in mind, corrupted potion got deleted from the game. So it is making those potions stronger, and you get 40% upfront plus the full over time. So it's a very, very good early game sustain rune. First Strike getting shifted over to be more about the damage amp and less about getting very, very large gold gain late game. So Flashbang Warning, let's talk about math on the runes. Alrighty, Absorb Life. This is if I'm Jinx and I have perfect CS, my health per minute before and after. This, by the way, is also including lifesteal. This is 3% or 3.5% lifesteal from Dorn's Blade. So I'm assuming I'm attacking like each minion once in the wave with my expected base attack or total attack damage. And I'm getting very meaningfully increased regen if I get perfect CS. If I need the health, of course. I'm getting 7 CS a minute, which is pretty average. And assuming I'm still fully injured and getting this full regen, I'm still getting a meaningful amount of extra regen. Now keep in mind, Jinx has pretty bad regen baseline. So more of, you know, X% more of a small number is still a pretty small number, but it is a meaningful increase in regen. Font of Life, heal per trigger. So if I land a spell once and you auto them once before and after, it is just a better spell, period. Now, of course, if I auto them, if I slow them permanently and you auto them permanently for the entire fight, it's a much, 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 much worse rune. Now, this is fraudulent. This is arguably less fraudulent, although keep in mind that old Font of Life, I mean, the question is like, how often was it triggering? How often was I slowing them and you auto-attacking them versus how often was I just slowing them with the cooldown back? And keep in mind that Font of Life hits both of us. It helps you who are autoing, and it helps me who is landing the slow. This is definitely very, very good. Actually, one thing I want to point out with Font of Life as well is that its cooldown is actually unique. I'm going to scroll back up to show you. So one thing that's actually really valuable around minor runes is cooldown timing. So Mana Flow Band is oh shoot, I'm going to get it backwards. Scorch is 10 seconds, Mana Flow Band is 15 seconds, and Font of Life is 20 seconds, as I believe the numbers. The fact that they all have different cooldowns is actually really, really valuable, because it means you have these different windows of like, oh, I don't just like literally always cast spell every 15 seconds. It's, oh, I want to like, is it worth it to just only get Font of Life or to only get Mana Flow stacking or to only get my support, whatever. That's really, really valuable. Having these different decent cooldowns is really, really good for not just making the game be like, oh, I applied 17 systems all at once off one spell. Yes, this is a system that gets applied off one spell, but like, I think it's really, really smart, and even if it wasn't intentional, it's still really good that these sort of similarly triggering effects all have different cooldowns. I think it's really, really useful. So anyway, here is the math on Futures Market versus Cashback. Now, I chose Jinx as our example champion here and took her average completion time of Legendary 1, Legendary 2, Legendary 3, Legendary 4, and Legendary 5, and said, okay, across the course of a game, what is its worth? Obviously, again, I can finish Noon Quiver early with old Futures Market, and then at some point I would go 50 gold in debt, like here, and I finish my Kraken Slayer. Now, again, to be clear, though, I can get Kraken Slayer 200 gold earlier, but not, you know, with cashback, right? So you know, these breakpoints are lost, to be clear, right? You lose these breakpoints. You lose this like first legendary or first epic breakpoint, and they are gone forever. The second one comes in, and you finish item number 2, and you finish your Infinity Edge, and now you're just off the races. Like now, you're never coming back from this. You're just like clearly better. Now, to be clear, the average game ends at around 3 items. So like this gold you got from your third cashback, it doesn't matter because who cares? You build a longsword, you're already pretty much full build. You still want to control it anyway. And so it's like you're going to be slower on item 1. You're going to be relatively similar on item 2, right? I have 180 free gold with 190 free gold, and then I go buy item 2, and then this happens, right? So I'm slower on item 1. I am slower on item 2 still, and then I'm faster on item 3, but it's going to feel way better. It's going to feel way, way, way better. So even though this rune is arguably actually weaker, because you are going to hit your first 2 breakpoints more slowly, this rune's actually going to get used and going to feel awesome. And that's great. It's just a really, really good redesign. And that's the rundown, basically. There's changes to ARAM, changes to Arena. I think I had like one bug fix story to tell, so I'm going to scroll down to the bug fix section. That's Arena stuff. Let me find it. Maybe I don't actually. Never mind. Oh yeah, the Katarina ult one, right? So there was some scripting in her ultimate that basically said, if you are cooldown, if you are CC, don't let me cast a spell. But for whatever reason, that buff that was doing that was lingering beyond the CC duration. So you could like get out of a stun, press R, and the script would be like, wait, you're stunned, stop. And obviously that would just like grief you. So that was obviously really bad. And so that was the thing that was fixed basically. Everything else was relatively small here, so not too much to talk about. Anyway, that is the patch rundown. I thought it was going to be short. It was not. Full 2 hours. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.